Chapter 37:16. Master, Luo Yu also came over from nearby. After cupping his hands and bowing, he said, "The matter has been settled." Feng Jiu responded. Not far away, Gu Mo and Qi Kong came over. Master, the matter has been settled. The two of them also reported their mission. At the same time, they each took out some of the treasures they had obtained from those clans. On this trip, they didn't harm the lives of others. They only took the life of the clan heads and plundered some of their belongings as a warning. If there was a next time, it wouldn't be so easy. Let's rest for a while. Lu Yun and Du Fan went ahead to buy a residence in Spirit Immortal City to settle down. When we arrive in the city, we can directly move in, Feng Jiu said, motioning for them to sit down and rest. They sat down under a nearby tree. Luo Yu said, "Master, I heard that it's very difficult to buy a residence in Spirit Immortal City." Hearing this, Feng Jiu smiled. No matter how difficult it is, they will find a way. We just need to wait. Lung Hua, who was at the side, handed them some spirit fruits and said warmly, "Master knows that buying a residence in Spirit Immortal City is more troublesome. That's why he let Du Fan and Lu Yin go together." When they heard this, they laughed. That's right. Du Fan can be considered a leader. He can handle internal and external affairs well. How can a residence in Spirit Immortal City not be settled well? On the other side, Du Fan and Lu Yun, who had gone ahead, looked at the majestic Eastern City Gate Tower in front of them and smiled. Lu Yun, look, this city looks pretty good. Du Fan gently fanned himself with the fan in his hand. Dressed in white, he had the appearance of an elegant young master. Lu Yun, who was dressed in black, smiled and said, "We came from the Eastern City Gate. Are we going to buy a residence in the Eastern City? Or should we make a decision after inquiring about the other regions?" No rush, no rush. Let's first find a place to drink a pot of tea and inquire about the differences between the four cities to see which district is most suitable for Master to nurture the fetus. Du Fan's eyes narrowed as he smiled, fanning himself from time to time as he strode forward. Before entering the city, they had a hand over the crystal stones, while the people who lived in the city had to show their identity jade tablets. After the two of them paid the crystal stones and entered the city, they casually strolled around and found a tea house to sit down and drink tea. Have you heard? Peak Master Ren of the High Firmament Celestial Sect was killed. At the table next to Du Fan's, several cultivators were drinking tea and discussing the recent news in low voices. I know about this. The news has been spreading for a few days. Not only was Peak Master Ren killed, but more than a dozen sect disciples were also crippled. However, the High Firmament Celestial Sect did not take any action on this matter. Until now, we still don't know who killed Peak Master Ren and crippled the cultivation of more than a dozen Celestial Sect disciples. Then you must not know this. Peak Master Ren's corpse was sent back to the Ren clan, and the disciples whose cultivation was crippled were also sent back to their clans. Moreover, I heard that the people of the High Firmament Celestial Sect told them to let this matter go, but a few clans refused to listen. They were unwilling to let their disciples be crippled like this, so they asked them to draw portraits of those people and put them on the bounty board. They said that as long as anyone can take the heads of those people, they would be heavily rewarded. Chapter 37:17. Purple Gold Spirit Deer? What's that? Someone asked in confusion. This purple gold spirit deer is a good thing. I heard that its entire body is a treasure. Moreover, it can't be fed by ordinary people. Aside from gold coins, it only eats crystal stones. Ordinary people can't afford to raise it. Purple gold spirit deer? Is it a type of deer? I've seen many spirit deer, but I've never heard of this purple gold spirit deer. Another person said in surprise. It's a type of deer. It's said that its blood can cure hundreds of poisons. Although it's a deer, it can fly and has boundless strength. I don't know much about this purple gold spirit deer, but I heard that it's very precious. Even the High Firmament Celestial Sect doesn't dare to have any ideas about such a precious thing, so don't talk about it. A rogue cultivator holding a jug of wine walked over to the table and sat down. He retracted his leg and stepped on the chair. He glanced at the people around the table and said, There's a piece of news that you guys definitely don't know about. Originally, some people were unhappy to be pushed aside by a stranger, but after hearing his words, they became curious and suppressed their displeasure. What kind of place is this spirit immortal city? It's the head of the 4 great cities. Any news can be said to spread here in a short time. Oh, is that so? The rogue cultivator took a sip of wine and picked up the refreshments on the table. Then did you guys hear about how many clan heads were killed in one night? Hearing this, they were startled and looked at each other. Which clan heads were killed? Why were they killed? The world is big, so it's normal for a few people to die in one day. Even if the clan heads were killed, what's the connection? Du Fan and Lu Yun were drinking tea and listening to the conversation from the table next to them. Their lips curled up. It seemed that they had completed their mission and returned to their master's side. However, the news in Spirit Immortal City was really fast. Someone actually found out about the news so quickly. No connection? Hee hee. That's because you guys don't know that the clan heads who were killed just recently took back their crippled disciples. Moreover, they worked together to issue a kill order and put up a few people's portraits on the bounty list. As the rogue cultivator spoke, he lowered his voice mysteriously. Also, overnight, all the portraits on the bounty list disappeared. Even the portraits that were sent here were destroyed overnight. Even the portraits that were circulated outside were quickly recovered. Now, except for some people who have seen the portraits, no one knows what those people look like. Hearing this, the cultivators at the table were shocked. It wasn't just the cultivators at the table. It could be said that almost all the cultivators on the second floor were pretending to be drinking when they were actually listening to the news. The more they heard, the more shocked they were. A clan that was able to send a disciple into the high firmament immortal sect was definitely not an ordinary third-rate clan. However, those people were actually able to take the lives of the patriarchs of those few clans in a single night, and even make their portraits be removed from the bounty list without a single one remaining. Even the portraits that were circulating outside were recovered one by one. One could imagine how terrifying the strength of those people was. Chapter 37:18. Hearing their words, Du Fan smiled and called out, "Waiter, add more tea." "Come." The waiter shouted loudly. His footsteps moved, his body agilely coming to their table. The copper kettle in his hand added tea for them from low to high, the boiling hot tea poured into the teapot accurately, not a single drop spilling out. "Guests, please enjoy your tea." The waiter finished pouring the tea and was about to leave when he was called out too. "Wait." Du Fan called out. He closed the fan in his hand and looked at the waiter. "Waiter, I want to ask you something." Hearing this, the waiter's gaze shifted and he asked with a smile, "What do you want to ask?" Du Fan smiled and took out 2 crystals, placing them on the table. "I want to ask you something. If you want to buy a house in the Spirit Immortal City, which of the 4 districts in the city is the most secluded and elegant?" Hearing this, the smile on the waiter's face deepened, and he became more sincere. He glanced at the 2 crystals and said, "If you want to know which district in the city is the most secluded and elegant, it would definitely be the Spirit Immortal Alley in the Southern District. That's a famous place in Spirit Immortal City, and it's also the most secluded and elegant place. Even a small house, there isn't something that an ordinary person can afford. Furthermore, even if you have the money, you might not be able to buy it." The waiter told them everything he knew. Not only did he tell them about the layout of the city, but he also told them about the various large clans and forces in the 4 districts on the other side, in a high firmament celestial sects meeting hall. In one night, the patriarchs of those clans were all killed. After they killed them, they left a message. "If you're not satisfied, you can fight again," a supremacy said solemnly. Thinking about the news they had just received, they were extremely shocked. They didn't expect that even though they had clearly given instructions, there were still a few clans that didn't listen to them and attacked those people. Those people's methods were so fierce that it shocked them even more. It was fine if they didn't attack, but once they did, they directly took the lives of the other clan's patriarchs. The death of a clan's patriarch was enough to plunge the clan into chaos. In addition to internal strife, they also had to guard against other clans making a move against them at this time. It could be said that this move of theirs was really frightening. Everyone in the hall was silent. In just a short period of time, the shock that those people brought to them again and again was enough to have a shocking effect. If it was said that they did not take them seriously before, then after hearing this news, they were more or less a little relieved in their hearts. They were glad that they listened to the sect master's instructions and didn't attack them. They were glad that the immortal sect didn't interfere in this matter. The sect master stroked his beard and sighed softly. I've already instructed them, but they refuse to listen. Now that this has happened, I don't need to instruct them anymore. I don't think anyone will continue to harp on this matter unless they really want to be exterminated. Chapter 37:19. Hearing the sect master's words, everyone was slightly surprised. Was there someone behind the scenes, pushing for this matter? For a moment, they could not help but look at each other. When Peak Master's son heard this, he was shocked and instinctively looked up. He saw the sect master's gaze fall on him. Seeing this, he composed himself and forced himself to calm down. All right, disperse. The sect master gestured for them to disperse. Duan Yunha, who was shocked when he heard this matter again, had been in a daze since just now and had not recovered. He knew that if he went against those people, the consequences would definitely be unbearable. Now, those clans should have already tasted the consequences. Thinking of the words they left behind, he shook his head inwardly. Whether it was the high firmament celestial sect or those clans, those people were so confident and arrogant. No, it should not be said that they were arrogant, because they had the right to be arrogant. He looked at the distant sky and thought of the beautiful woman in red. He faintly felt that one day they would be able to meet again. After Du Fan and Lu Yun in the Spirit Immortal City asked about the matter, they headed to the South City District. They first went to the Spirit Immortal Alley that the waiter had mentioned and walked around. Although it was called an alley, it was actually separated by this alley. On the other side of the alley, there were city guards guarding it. They quietly snuck in and looked around. They found that it was somewhat similar to the area of the Feng residence where they used to live. They were all high-class places, and the environment was quiet and secluded. There were no messy people walking around. After looking around, they saw a house that had not been occupied yet. Seeing that the house was independent and the surroundings were quiet and secluded, the two of them immediately decided, "This is the place," Du Fan and Lu Yun said at the same time. As soon as they finished speaking, the two of them looked at each other and laughed. A small building in the center of a lake. Du Fan looked at the door sign and said to Lu Yun, "Let's go and buy a house." They went directly to the city lord's residence, which was in charge of the South City District. However, when they arrived at the city lord's residence, they were not allowed to enter. Go, go, go. Do you think the city lord is someone you can meet just because you want to? Hurry up and go back to where you came from. The guard guarding the southern city lord's mansion chased the two of them away. Du Fan smiled and gently fanned himself with the fan in his hand. He said, "We're here to settle the matter of settling down. You'd better inform them." As he spoke, he stuffed 2 crystals into Du Fan's hands. The city guard held it in his hand and glanced at it. His tone softened a little as he said, "You can leave. You won't be able to see the city lord." The city lord has so many things to do every day. How could he help you settle such a small matter? If you want to register, go to the registration office in the city and wait in line. There will be people there to help you. Hearing this, Du Fan smiled and asked, "The houses in the Spirit Immortal Alley area can only be found by the city lord, right?" Hearing them mention the house in Spirit Immortal Alley, the city guard became more cautious. "You want to buy the house in Spirit Immortal Alley? Which clan are you from?" Generally speaking, the people who could buy the houses there were not people they could afford to offend. However, these 2 people in front of them, even if they had extraordinary bearings, shouldn't be people from some big family, right? Chapter 37:20. Seeing them turn and leave, the city guard just stared at them for a while and did not pay much attention to them. After Du Fan and Lu Yun left, they went around to the other side of the city lord's mansion. Looking at the encirclement of the city lord's mansion, they looked at each other. In the next moment, they took a deep breath and leaped inside. There were quite a few guards in the city lord's mansion, but with their cultivation, it was not difficult for them to sneak in. They walked around the city lord's mansion and found the city lord's courtyard. Seeing that he was not in the courtyard, the two of them stood on a tree for a while and released their spiritual sense. Sister Xiao Qiu, did you send ginseng tea to the city lord again? A maidservant looked at the other maidservant with a smile and asked, Yes, the city lord is dealing with affairs in the study and will probably be busy until the evening. Madam asked me to send a cup of ginseng tea to the city lord to refresh him. The maidservant on the other side said. She did not talk much and carried the things in the direction of the study. Du Fan and Lu Yun withdrew their divine senses and quietly followed the maidservant to the study. After the maidservant delivered the tea and left, the two of them looked at the guards in the lower courtyard. There were a total of 8 people inside and outside. There were also 2 people standing at the door of the study. After glancing at Du Fan, Lu Yun moved his hand and tapped the acupuncture points of the people below. Only then did he jump down with Du Fan and come to the door of the study. The door creaked open and the two of them walked in. They saw the middle-aged man in front of the desk working on something. When he heard the door open, he seemed to have sensed that something was wrong and raised his head to look at them. Who are you people? Tang Jiwu frowned slightly as he looked at the 2 people who walked in. There was no announcement outside and no movement. It was conceivable that no one knew that these 2 people had come in. Such a large city lord's mansion had been infiltrated by these 2 people without anyone knowing. The strength of these 2 people was naturally extraordinary. Thinking of this, he looked at the 2 people for a moment, but he could not see through their cultivation. As the city lord of the southern district, his cultivation was neither the strongest nor the weakest among the 4 city lords. However, he could not even see through the strength of the 2 people in front of him. This discovery could not help but make him secretly shocked. It was also because he could not see through their strength that he, who had been in a high position for a long time, calmed down after seeing that the 2 people did not seem to have any ill intentions. He picked up the ginseng tea on the table and took a sip. His actions were calm and unhurried. What's the matter? Let's sit down and talk. With the demeanor of a city lord, he gestured for the 2 to sit down. The city lord's extraordinary bearing. Du Fan in his hand, he said leisurely, City Lord Tang's bearing is indeed extraordinary. He paused and said, City Lord, the city lords. His voice paused, and his eyes fell on the city lord. He said with a smile, We do have something to trouble City Lord Tang. However, it's difficult to meet at the main entrance. We can only take the liberty to disturb you in this way. Please forgive us for our rudeness. Tang Jiwu looked at his elegant and noble appearance. Even when facing him, the city lord, he was not the least bit restrained or nervous. On the contrary, he was very relaxed and casual. As for the fan in his hand, he only needed to glance at it to know that it was not an ordinary item. Chapter 37:21. I am Du Fan. We want to buy the small house in the center of the lake in the spiritual immortal alley in the south of the city. So we would like to ask City Lord Tang to do us a favor. Du Fan smiled and gently fanned himself with the fan in his hand. His smiling gaze fell on Tang Jiwu. Hearing this, City Lord Tang did not immediately shout angrily. Instead, he glanced at him and said in a deep voice, You have good taste. You took a fancy to the small house in the center of the lake in the spiritual immortal alley at first glance. However, since you know about that place, you should also know that it is not for sale. I know. I also know that the deed to the small house in the center of the lake is also in City Lord Tang's hands. That is why we are here to find City Lord Tang, Du Fan said with a smile. Hearing this, City Lord Tang glanced at Du Fan and unhurriedly took a sip of his ginseng tea. He said, Since you know, why do you think that I will sell the small house in the center of the lake to you? You should know that there are many clans and forces in the city who want to buy the small house in the center of the lake, but can't. Du Fan smiled and looked at City Lord Tang. He said, I heard that City Lord Tang suffered an extremely serious internal injury and has not been able to recover. Your strength has also been stagnant. Tang Jiwu frowned and his face darkened. What do you mean? I have a rank 7 inner elixir here that can heal your internal injuries. Furthermore, it might even allow your strength to advance to the next level. I wonder if City Lord Tang wants it? Du Fan said as he calmly looked at Tang Jiwu, whose expression had changed slightly. A rank 7 inner core is considered a treasure by the High Firmament Celestial Sect. How could you have it? Who are you people? Tang Jiwu narrowed his eyes and stared at Du Fan. He was secretly shocked. His internal injury had not healed for many years, and his strength had been stagnant. The 4 city lords of the spiritual immortal city would compete once every 5 years. This year was the 5th year, and there were only about 3 months left until the competition. He had planned to keep the small house in the center of the lake to exchange it for elixirs from the High Firmament Celestial Sect. Who would have thought that? Du Fan stood up and walked toward the desk. He said, City Lord Tang, who we are and why we have a rank 7 inner core is not the most important thing. The most important thing is that City Lord Tang needs a rank 7 inner core, right? Hearing this, Tang Jiwu also stood up. He looked at Du Fan in front of him and asked, You took out a rank 7 inner core just to exchange for the small building in the center of the lake? Although the small building at the center of the lake in Spirit Immortal Alley was in a good location and was priceless, it was still far from being comparable to a rank 7 item. He had originally planned to exchange the small building at the center of the lake with the Immortal Sect for a rank 7 pill, so the small building at the center of the lake could only be considered as a bonus. Now that they had directly said that they would exchange a rank 7 item for the small building at the center of the lake, he was a bit surprised. There's one more thing. Du Fan gently waved the fan in his hand. We need to settle down in the spiritual immortal city and ask the city Lord to take care of us in the future. Yes, that's all. Hearing this, City Lord Tang secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He thought it was something big. If it was as they said, it would be easy. Thus, he looked at the two of them and asked, What about the elixirs? Chapter 3722. City Lord Tang was astonished. A top-grade 7th level inner core? How could they have a treasure that even the Lingxiao Celestial Sect didn't have? One had to know that 7th level pills were divided into 3 types, and the top grade was even more precious than the top grade. With a bit of doubt and surprise, he took the bottle and poured out the pill inside. As soon as the pill entered his hand, a rich and fragrant medicinal fragrance rushed into his nostrils. The spiritual energy radiating from the pill and the pill veins on the pill caused him to widen his eyes in shock. This is really a top-grade 7th level inner core. He couldn't hide his shock as he spoke, but he hurriedly put the pill back into the bottle and closed the bottle cap as if he was worried that the medicinal fragrance would dissipate. After putting the pill back into the bottle, he stared at them in disbelief. You actually put a top-grade 7th level inner core in such a small bottle? You are simply... It seems that City Lord Tang is very satisfied. Du Fan interrupted him and opened the fan in his hand. He looked at him with a smile. My master is about to enter the city. When does City Lord Tang plan to help me settle this matter? Hearing this, Tang Jiwu's heart moved slightly. He saw that these two people had extraordinary temperaments, and their strength was unfathomable. He thought that they were young masters of aristocratic families, but he didn't expect to hear them talk about their master. So, these two people were just attendants, and they weren't masters? If even the attendants had such a bearing, then what kind of person would the master they were talking about be? Thinking of this, he looked at the pill bottle in his hand and said, Since you took this pill to make a deal with me, I will help you settle this matter as soon as possible. Du Fan nodded and said, I hope that City Lord can keep the deal here today a secret. Don't tell anyone. Understood. City Lord Tang replied and sat down on a chair. He took out the title deed of the small house in the center of the lake and asked, May I know whose name is written on this title deed? Du Fan and Lu Yun looked at each other. Finally, Du Fan said, Fengjiu. Fengjiu? City Lord Tang muttered the name silently. This was a name that couldn't be any simpler, but he couldn't tell if it belonged to a man or a woman. Fengjiu? This person was their master? Although he was curious, he didn't ask too much. He just went through the formalities and gave them some identity jade tokens. Then he said, "If you have any problems in the future, you can come and find me." Then, he added, "Just go through the main entrance." Du Fan smiled and put everything away. "Thank you." City Lord Tang sent them out. Seeing that everyone outside the study had their acupoints sealed, he couldn't help but glance at the two of them. Seeing this, Lu Yun raised his hand and unsealed the acupoints of the city guards. When the acupoint unsealing hand appeared in the air, City Lord Tang narrowed his eyes. He took a deep look at the two of them and personally escorted them out of the City Lord mansion. When the guards of the City Lord's mansion saw the two people who were supposed to leave walking out and being personally escorted out by the City Lord, they couldn't help but widen their eyes and swallow back their questions. These two people had clearly left. Why did they come out from inside? And the City Lord personally escorted them out? Where did these two people come from? Goodbye. Du Fan and Lu Yun cupped their hands and gestured. They glanced at the city guards and then turned to leave. Chapter 37-23. He was determined to win the election of a new city lord 3 months later. After Du Fan and Lu Yun took the key, they went to the small house in the middle of the lake. The two went in and looked around. Seeing that everything was arranged properly, they only lacked some maids and servants. So, Du Fan said to Lu Yun, "Master hasn't arrived yet. How about we go to the slave market first and pick a few servants?" "Well, okay." Lu Yun responded and went to the slave market with him. The small house in the middle of the lake had always been closed, and no one had heard of anyone moving in. Now that the door was opened and there were people inside, it suddenly made people curious. Apart from the two men who were making arrangements, they didn't see anyone else arrive. It wasn't until the evening of the next day that a carriage slowly arrived at the gate of the small house in the center of the lake. A group of men and women entered the house, but no one saw the faces of those people clearly. "Master, what do you think of the environment here?" Du Fan looked at Fengjiu with a smile and asked. Fengjiu nodded and said with a smile, "It's very quiet and quiet. It's really not bad. We went to the slave market yesterday and bought a few servants, as well as the kitchen maids. Everything has been arranged." Du Fan said, looking at Fengjiu, "Master, are you tired after a long journey? I'll take you to the main courtyard to rest." "Okay." Fengjiu responded and followed Du Fan to the backyard. As they walked, they looked at the environment inside. Between the courtyards, there were green trees and hundreds of flowers in full bloom. It was very beautiful. The courtyards, terraces, pavilions, rockery, and lakes were all beautiful. At nightfall, I heard that someone moved into the small house in the middle of the lake in the South City District. The East City Lord looked at the housekeeper and asked, "Yes, it was prepared yesterday. Someone moved in today, but no one knows who moved in, and no one can find out." The housekeeper said, but he was also surprised. The small house in the middle of the lake was discussed by the City Lord with the South City Lord, but he couldn't buy it. How did it suddenly change hands? Who on earth was so capable? How could they get the small house in the middle of the lake? "Oh, does no one know who moved in?" said the East City Lord, surprised. He looked pensive and then said, "Those who can live there are definitely not ordinary people. I think there will be some movements in a while. When the time comes, we will know who they are." At the same time, other people were also discussing this matter, but after hearing that they couldn't find out who that person was, they didn't pay any attention to it. They were all thinking that even if they didn't know now, sooner or later, there would be news. At that time, naturally, those who should know would know. However, what they didn't expect was that ever since Fengjiu and the others moved in, they had been living in seclusion. Moreover, their actions couldn't be any more low-key. Gradually, everyone forgot that there were still some people in the small building at the center of the lake. In the blink of an eye, a few months had passed. Fengjiu's belly was getting bigger and bigger. Because it was her first child and she was pregnant with twins, she didn't dare to just lie still all the time. Instead, she would move around a fixed time every day. She would walk around the small house in the middle of the lake so that it would be easier for her to give birth in the future. Chapter 3724. Fengjiu had been here for a few months, but she had never gone out. Now that she heard that the quinquennial city lord election had begun, and that Chi Kong was also planning to run for a landlord in the East District, she couldn't help but smile. The election should be a regional election, right? There's nothing much to see at the beginning. Let's wait until the final election of the 4 districts. Fengjiu sat in the pavilion and took a sip of tea as she spoke unhurriedly. Hearing this, Du Fan smiled and said, "Yes, this is just the beginning of the audition. I heard that many people are participating. If Master wants to see the final election, we can prepare for it. It won't be too late to go then." The 4 city lords of Spirit Immortal City were elected once every 5 years. The judges were elders and supremacies sent by the Soaring Firmament Celestial Sect. This was not only a competition of strength, but also one's ability to control and courage. Many people were paying attention to this grand ceremony that was held once every 5 years. If one was lucky enough to win a city lord of one of the 4 districts, not only would their status rise, but their reputation would also spread far and wide. After all, this was one of the largest cities in the mainland. A city lord was like a piece of fat meat that no one wanted to miss out on. Being in charge of any district in Spirit Immortal City and being in charge of that district's families and various forces naturally made people want to fight for it. "Master, I plan to go out and take a look. Do you need to buy anything? Or anything you want to eat? I'll bring it back while I'm at it." Du Fan's gaze fell on Fengjiu as he spoke. He originally thought that she had been living in seclusion ever since she came here. Now that there was such a commotion, she would accompany Master to go out and take a look. However, it was clear that Master didn't want to go to the primary election. Although Master didn't want to go, he had to go. After settling down here, this kind of commotion would be the best way to see the strength of various forces and obtain information. Even if it was just a primary election, he still had to go and take a look. See if there are any specialty snacks on the streets. Bring some back for me. Fengjiu sat leisurely with one hand supporting her cheek, smelling the faint fragrance of flowers in the air and feeling the gentle breeze caressing her face. She couldn't help but yawn, feeling a little sleepy. "Okay," Du Fan replied with a smile and left. Lung Shuang walked over from not far away. Seeing Fengjiu's tired face, he asked, "Master, do you want to go back and sleep?" "Yeah, I'm a little sleepy. I'll go back and sleep for a while." She rubbed her stomach with one hand and slowly stood up. She felt that her body was getting heavier by the day. Even walking for a long time was tiring. Indeed, it was not easy to get pregnant, and it was even harder to have twins. Lung Shuang stepped forward to support her and accompanied her back carefully. At this time, he heard her voice coming out unhurriedly. "They still haven't found out anything about the ancient golden lotus?" Fengjiu asked slowly. "Not yet," Lung Shuang replied. "But I found one of the elixirs that Master asked me to look for." Perhaps it was because there had been no news for too long. Fengjiu didn't feel disappointed and only said, "Let them continue to ask." "Yes," Lung Shuang replied and helped her back to the main courtyard. After entering the room, he stood guard outside. Chapter 3725. She walked over to Xianyuan Mo's side and sat down. She held his hand and gently stroked his belly. "Mose, can you feel it?" "Our child. Although I don't have any news about the ancient golden lotus, I'll try other methods. Once I've gathered all the spiritual herbs, I'll try to refine a pill that can expel the black lotus energy from your body." She spoke softly and told him her plan. Although she didn't know if the pill could be successfully refined, or if the pill could expel the black lotus energy from his body and wake him up, she had to try no matter what. She raised her eyes and looked in front of her. She saw a faint golden light emerging from the spirit spring and was slightly surprised. She got up and walked over to the spirit spring. When she arrived at the spirit spring, she couldn't help but stare in astonishment at the tiny golden lotus leaf that had grown out of the spirit spring. "Strange, why is there a golden lotus leaf?" She murmured softly and stared in astonishment at the fingernail-sized golden lotus leaf. The spirit spring water came naturally from this space. The spirit spring water was rich in spiritual energy, and the water had the ability to purify itself. Even if one was injured and soaked in it, their injuries would heal faster. Furthermore, after being purified the next day, the water would be as clear as before and could be drunk. However, there had never been anything floating in the spirit spring, let alone a tiny golden lotus leaf. A golden lotus leaf? She was stunned and couldn't help but think of the golden lotus seed that Imo-chan had left behind and tossed into the spirit spring water. Although the golden lotus that she had obtained from the stairway to immortality was precious, it was not an ancient golden lotus. However, it contained a wisp of the ancient golden lotus's aura. Back then, when she had moved the golden lotus into the space to plant it, the lotus seeds had also been kept and given away. However, the golden lotus leaves that she had obtained back then were only ordinary lotus leaves, unlike the tiny golden lotus leaf in front of her. Her eyes flashed as she stared at the fingernail-sized golden lotus leaf. The tiny ray of light reflected by the golden lotus leaf was extremely beautiful. If it could grow bigger, how beautiful would it be? However, from what she knew, the leaves of the ancient golden lotus were golden in color. So why would the lotus seed that she had thrown into the spiritual spring grow such a golden lotus leaf? She reached out and picked up the golden lotus leaf, holding it in her palm. There were no roots or branches, just a tiny golden lotus leaf. Putting the golden lotus leaf back into the spirit spring water, she pondered for a while and collected her thoughts. Forget it. If he couldn't figure it out, then he wouldn't think about it. When she returned to Xinyuan-mo's side, she took his pulse. Her brows were slightly furrowed, and her expression was somewhat dignified. His body had been in a deep slumber all this time. Coupled with the black lotus energy in his body, the more time passed, the more unfavorable it would be for his body. If it weren't for her pill protecting his heart meridians, he probably wouldn't have been able to keep his life. Originally, she only planned to put him in this space, but after checking his condition today, she had no choice but to make a decision. She would use the 1,000-year chilling ice bed to suppress the black lotus energy in his body and put his body into a dormant state. Chapter 37:26. She used her divine sense to control everything in the space and move the ice bed out from its corner. She moved Xinyuan-mo's onto it, then took out a medicinal pill from the space and fed it to Xinyuan-mo's. She then took out silver needles and sealed all the major acupuncture points on his body. After doing all this, she gently exhaled and glanced to Xinyuan-mo's. Then she flashed out of the space and returned to her room to rest. 3 days later, Fingjio woke up early because today was the day of the final competition for the 4 district city lords. Chi Kong stood out among the candidates, so she naturally had to go and watch the fun. For the cultivators in Spirit Immortal City, this day was extremely lively and anticipated. The entire city's citizens had gathered early to watch the competition, waiting for the final competition to begin. The final competition for the 4 district city lords was held in the middle of the 4 districts, on the Spirit Immortal City's spiritual immortal platform. The large spiritual immortal platform was circular in shape, with the platform as its center. It was 100 meters long and about 2 meters high from the ground, allowing everyone to see everything on the platform. The 4 sect envoys sent by the High Firmament Immortal Sect were already sitting on the platform. Aside from them, there were 4 other district city lords sitting on the left and right sides. The final 4 winners could issue a challenge to the district city lord they wanted to challenge. Only by winning the challenge could they become the new district city lord. The first few days were a test of the candidate's leadership, courage, and adaptability. Those who were able to pass through the various tests and enter the final round were naturally not ordinary people. Among these people, some were members of large clans, some were leaders of powerful forces, some were leaders of mercenary groups, and some were even outstanding rogue cultivators. Of course, there were also people like Chi Kong whose origins were unknown. Under Du Fan's arrangement, Feng Jiao and the others came to a tall pavilion and sat down. This tea house was one of their businesses, and this was the first time she had come here in several months. She sat in the three-story pavilion while Chin Xian and the others prepared tea and pastries. She leaned against the railing and looked around. All she could see was a black mass of heads. "This place is not bad," Feng Jiu smiled, then looked at Leng Hua and asked who bought this place. Leng Hua revealed a gentle smile and said, "Du Fan chose this place. He also bought it. Apart from this place, we have businesses in all 4 districts of the city. It seems that I've stayed in the small house in the center of the lake for too long." Feng Jiu smiled and got up to lie down on the soft couch. Because it was high up, even lying on the soft couch, he could still see the table below. Du Fan walked in with pastries in his hands and said with a smile, "Master told us to develop our forces and take root here, so we naturally didn't dare to be negligent. In this spirit immortal city, we have tea houses, brothels, medicine houses, and so on. Once Qi Kong wins the position of City Lord of the East City, we'll have people among the 4 city lords. It'll be more convenient for us to do things in the future." Feng Jiu took a sip of the tea Chin Xian served and asked, "Then why did he choose the East City District? I thought that since we're living in the South City District, he would choose the City Lord of the South City District." Chapter 37:27. "Oh, did he advance again?" Feng Jiu raised her eyebrows and said, "Even if he advanced again, he shouldn't be Qi Kang's opponent, right?" "That's true. However, the City Lord of the South City District has an extraordinary temperament. Moreover, he has made a deal with us first and has kept his promise to not let anyone disturb us for the past few months. Therefore, after discussing with me, Qi Kong has decided to fight the East City District." Du Fan gently fanned himself with the fan in his hand. He lifted his robe and sat down at the table with a smile on his face. In his heart, he thought, Tang Jiwu really has the demeanor of a city lord. After making a deal with him, he didn't have any petty thoughts. On the contrary, he kept his promise and opened the door for us. Since that's the case, we naturally won't go against him. Moreover, Qi Kong was one of their people and City Lord Tang didn't know about it. It would be more convenient for them to use their forces secretly when they needed to. Hearing Du Fan's words, Feng Jiu smiled and looked down at the stage. She asked, "Which one of the people below is the City Lord Tang you mentioned?" She wanted to see how extraordinary this person was to be praised by Du Fan. "The second one from the right, the one in black." Du Fan smiled and looked at the stage. He said, "He originally had an old illness and his strength was stagnant. However, after taking that elixir, his old illness was cured and even his strength increased. If there's anyone among the 4 city lords who can keep their city lord position, it will definitely be City Lord Tang." Feng Jiu looked down and glanced at the people on the stage. Her eyes fell on the second middle-aged man in black on the right. She saw that the man was sitting upright with a strong waist and a strong back. His breathing was steady and his eyes were like torches. He looked in front of him with a dignified expression. The aura of a leader naturally flowed out. Looking at his demeanor, he is indeed not bad. He has the demeanor of a city lord. She nodded with a smile and looked at the other people. When she glanced at the man in white from the Lingxiao celestial sect, she raised her eyebrows. "Another acquaintance." Leng Hua looked over and said, "It's that guy called Duan Yunha. He has seen Qi Kong before." "It doesn't matter. Even if he recognizes him, so what?" Feng Jiu smiled and looked at the 16 people who finally stood out and were invited to the stage. Qi Kong was one of them. However, among the 16 people, Qi Kong Luk was the youngest. The 16 of them were all calm and composed, and their faces were filled with a dignified expression. With one look, one could tell that they were all people of high status. However, although these people looked calm and dignified, one could more or less see that they were a little nervous. Only Qi Kong, who was dressed in a navy blue robe, stood there calmly without the slightest hint of nervousness. After all, his strength was the strongest among these people and even among the 4 city lords. If he wanted to take down the city lord of the East District, it would be as easy as taking something out of his pocket. Chapter 37:28. He stared at the man in the dark blue robe in shock. That outstanding face. Wasn't he? Wasn't he one of the people beside the red-clothed woman he had met in the small town? Why was he here? And why was he running for the position of city lord? Instinctively, he looked around. His intuition told him that if this man was here, then his master would also be nearby. Duan Yunha's loss of composure naturally surprised the surrounding people. When the people from the celestial sect saw this, they looked at each other. One of the elders asked, "Yunha, what's going on?" The city lord sitting at the side followed Duan Yunha's gaze and looked at the young man. They seemed to be wondering what this young man had that could make the celestial sect's supremacy lose his composure. Duan Yunha couldn't see the red-clothed woman's figure in the surroundings, so he glanced at Chi Kong before looking away and saying, "It's nothing." He flicked his robe that was splashed with tea and closed his eyes. He didn't want to say anything more. When the people beside him saw this, they didn't ask any more questions. A guard stepped forward to clean up the broken teacup. Then the crowd looked at the 16 people standing on the stage again and re-examined them. On the stage, Chi Kong had one hand behind his back and the other in front of his abdomen. He stood there quietly and allowed the crowd to size him up as if he didn't see Duan Yunha's loss of composure. His expression was normal. Although the crowd didn't say anything, they were more or less sizing up the young man. Everyone could see that Duan Yunha's loss of composure was related to this man. It was as if he recognized him. Their gazes moved down and landed on the man's waist token. The two words, Chi Kong, were written on it. Chi Kong? They had never heard of him. However, to be able to stand out from so many candidates, one could imagine that this person wasn't ordinary. Cough. The elder from the High Firmament Celestial Sect stood up and looked at the 16 people. He said, "I'm sure all of you know the rules of this competition. Among the 16 of you, only 4 can stand on the stage and challenge the city lords of the 4 districts. Next, it will be a one-on-one battle. Don't overdo it and don't kill. As for who your opponents will be, for the sake of fairness, we will draw lots to decide." As he spoke, he waved his hand and signaled for someone to bring a pot of lots forward. He said, "There are 16 lots here and 16 numbers. Number 1's opponent will be number 3, number 2 will be number 4, and so on and so forth. After this round, the semifinals will be decided." Chi Kong looked at the lot in his hand. It had the number 16 written on it. He handed the lot to the person in charge of recording. Not long after, a board at the side hung the name tags of each person together, making it clear at a glance. Other than number 1 and no 3 going up first, the others all retreated to the side. Along with the sound of the start of the battle, the people around the round platform suddenly tensed up, staring intently at the 2 people on the platform. Compared to the nervousness of the people below the stage and the calmness of the people on the stage, Duan Yunha did not look at the intense battle between the 2 people on the stage. Instead, he shifted his gaze to Chi Kong. Chapter 37:29. With his strength, there was probably no one on the stage who was a match for him. He couldn't help but glance at the other city lords. Which one did he want to challenge? On the stage, the 2 figures fought fiercely. Fierce air currents whistled. Although there was no murderous intent in their moves, neither of them wanted to miss this once-in-5 years opportunity. Both of them displayed their special skills without any protection, trying their best to fight. The other people who were waiting to go on stage were all watching the 2 of them fight, because the winner was very likely to be their opponent. They naturally wouldn't miss this opportunity to observe their opponent. However, after a dozen or so moves, one of them was sent flying by the other's fists. He spat out a mouthful of blood and rolled off the stage. "Fourth master, 4th brother." The clansman of the middle-aged man who rolled off the stage exclaimed and quickly went forward to help him up. "4th brother, how are you? Are you all right?" The middle-aged man wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and shook his head at the clansman. Then he looked at the middle-aged man on the stage and cupped his hands. "The Chung family fist is indeed worthy of its reputation. I accept my loss wholeheartedly. Thank you for letting me win." On the stage, the middle-aged man cupped his hands in return. After glancing at the people below the stage, He walked to the side and sat down. Once the two of them had decided who was better, the second pair went up. After the two of them bowed to each other on the stage, their figures moved as fast as ghosts and attacked each other in an instant. The crowd watched in disgust. The winner is the head of the Chung family. The Chung family fist technique is famous far and wide. I heard that the head of the Chung family comprehended a set of Vajra fist technique some time ago. It's as strong as a mountain and has extremely strong inner strength. The head of the Chung family is a hot favorite this time. Even the bets have been set up. He's a popular candidate to enter the top 4. The others aren't weak either. Look at that one. That's the leader of the number 1 mercenary group, Genie Feng. And that one over there. Although he's a rogue cultivator, he's known as the Swift Sword Venerable, Shadowless Sword Venerable. And that one, all of them are top-notch figures. That's for sure. Our Spirit Immortal City is one of the top cities. If they weren't top-notch figures, how could they be the city lords of the 4 districts? Just as everyone was talking, another winner was decided on the stage. Another group of people went up to continue. In the loft, Fengjiu glanced at the people below the stage and narrowed her eyes, intending to take a break before watching again. In fact, she already knew who would emerge victorious in the end. Although these people were strong, in order to compete for the position of City Lord, in addition to strength, they also needed luck. Why did he say that? This was because if there was someone who could fight with the previous City Lord and even have a chance to win, but that person just had to face Qi Kong, then it would naturally be a waste of time. Lung Hua and the others watched from the top of the pavilion. The matches continued until it was Qi Kang's turn. His opponent was the mercenary commander. Even though Qi Kong was younger than him, the mercenary leader didn't underestimate him. After sizing him up, he cupped his hands and bowed. Please. Qi Kong returned the greeting. In the next moment, the two figures moved at the same time. Their fists and palms collided, and their spiritual power surged. Yunhe, do you know this person called Qi Kong? The elder at the side took a sip of tea and asked. Chapter 37:30. As soon as he finished speaking, he couldn't help but pause. He looked to the front and didn't say anything else, because in just a short while, Qi Kong had kicked the mercenary group's leader off the stage. When the mercenary group's leader fell off the stage, he didn't seem to have realized what was going on. Leader! The mercenaries who were watching from below the stage quickly rushed forward, but they saw that their leader had already stood up. He patted the dust off his body and looked at Qi Kong on the stage. He cupped his hands and said, Your Excellency, you have great skills. Thank you for letting me win, Qi Kong said. He looked away and walked to the center of the stage. He didn't care about the shocked gazes on and off the stage at all. It was as if he wasn't the one who had kicked the leader of the number 1 mercenary group off the stage in 3 moves. Because of this battle, almost everyone had a new understanding of Qi Kong. The 8 people who would advance to the next round had already been decided. Next would be the 8 people who would advance to the next round. At this moment, no one wanted to go up against Qi Kong. The leader of the number 1 mercenary group was so strong that even they wouldn't be able to kick him off the stage in 3 moves. However, Qi Kong had done it. Moreover, from the start of the battle until the end, the leader of the mercenary group hadn't even touched the corner of Qi Kang's clothes. With such strength and skills, they felt that whoever went up against him would have a hard time. As for the 4 city lords, the East City Lord's expression was normal, but his hand was tapping on the side of his chair from time to time. He looked at the people in front of him and analyzed quickly in his heart. The South City Lord sipped his tea. He wasn't worried at all about who would challenge him in the end, because he had just made a breakthrough and was very confident in his current strength. Of course, he would never have thought that the young Qi Kang's strength would be above his. If he knew this, he probably wouldn't be drinking tea so calmly. As for the other 2 city lords, they also looked at the people in front of them. They were guessing who would have the ability to fight with them in the end. Sitting in this position, they had the ability to play some tricks. However, unless it was absolutely necessary, they didn't want to do so in front of the Immortal Sect disciples. After all, if they were discovered, it would be difficult for them to step down. 8-4. In the end, he drew another lot. When he saw the lot in his hand, Chi Kong glanced at the people around him and said, "I'm one." The head of the Chung clan moved his hand that was holding the stick. He looked at Chi Kong and said, "Your opponent is me." As he spoke, he stepped forward. The others retreated on their own accord. Seeing the two of them facing each other, they couldn't help but guess who would emerge victorious in this battle. The two of them didn't use any weapons. After a bow, the head of the Chung clan exerted strength in his fists and attacked Chi Kong like a fierce tiger. However, Chi Kong chose to avoid the attack. He stepped sideways and circled behind the head of the Chung clan. He raised his palm and chopped down. Looking at the two of them fighting, the East City Lord's heart skipped a beat. He took a sip of tea and put it down. He continued to watch the two of them fight. The head of the Chung clan's fists were like fierce tigers with hidden strength. Chi Kang's movements were strange, and the wind from his palm was swift and fierce. The two of them exchanged less than 10 moves before the East City Lord saw the head of the Chung clan being sent flying. He staggered back and fell off the stage. "Good!" someone in the audience shouted, and the whole scene suddenly boiled up. Chapter 37-31. His movement technique is very powerful, and his palm technique is also very powerful. Moreover, he has always had the upper hand in the battle. It seems like he hasn't fully displayed his strength yet. Where did this person come from? Even the Chung family head is not his match. In my opinion, there will definitely be a change in the City Lord position this year. I wonder which City Lord he will challenge. However, the strength of the City Lords should not be underestimated. Compared to the City Lords, Chi Kong is too young. He is young, but don't forget that he was able to stand out among thousands of people until the end. He must be very strong in all aspects. As long as he succeeds in challenging the City Lord, he will be more than qualified to be the City Lord of this district. Perhaps the words of the people below the stage disturbed the City Lord East, or perhaps he was already prepared and had that thought that he shouldn't have. Therefore, when he saw the outcome of the battle, he quietly gave a look to one of the guards beside him. After Chi Kang's battle ended, he walked to the side and sat down. He only needed to wait for the others' battles to end before he could challenge the City Lord who wanted to challenge him. At this moment, the guards helped them change in a hot tea. The few people at the side watched the battle and took a sip of the tea. When Chi Kong picked up the tea, the aroma of the tea entered his nose. His expression changed slightly, and he looked up at the City Lords. Seeing that those people were watching the competition, he gently scraped the teacup and took a sip of tea. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw that the East City Lord was looking at him while he was drinking tea. There was a trace of relief on his face. Lung Hua, who was in the attic, also saw the scene on the stage. A smile appeared on his gentle face as he watched quietly. When the battle between the few groups ended, the elder of the Lingxiao celestial sect stood up and looked at the few people. He said, "The 4 people who stand out in the end can challenge the City Lords of the 4 districts. However, if they challenge the City Lords, the casualties will be unpredictable. They will have to bear the consequences." We know. As soon as they finished speaking, one of them took a step forward and arrived in front of the City Lord of the Western District. He said, "You would like to fight the City Lord of the Western District." Hearing this, the City Lord of the Western District stood up and walked to the center of the stage. Looking at the middle-aged man, the City Lord of the Western District smiled. "Since the second master of the Yu family wants to learn from me, I will gladly oblige. Please." With that, a pair of sabers appeared in the hands of the Yu family's second master. Spiritual energy surged from his body as he suddenly charged at the West District's City Lord. The 2 sabers were sharp and contained a bloodthirsty, killing intent. Unlike when he sparred with others before, this time he was using killing intent. Below the stage, the crowd was discussing. The Yu family is from the West City District. I heard that they have always been suppressed by the West City Lord. Last month, a young lady from the Yu family had an accident. I heard that it was done by the City Lord's son, but the matter was left unsettled in the end. No wonder the second master of the Yu family is so murderous. He probably wants to take this opportunity to kill the West City Lord. 5 years ago, The West City Lord used only one move to kill the person who challenged him. Today, the second master of the Yu family wants to challenge him. I'm afraid he won't be able to return alive. Challenging the City Lord is challenging the authority of the City Lord. They won't be merciful. You have to know that if you die on this stage, you die. There's no way to investigate. Bang! Chapter 37-32. Master, second uncle. Several exclamations came out. The people of the Yu family squeezed forward and came to the front of the stage. When they saw the pale second master with blood flowing out of his mouth, their eyes turned red. Second brother, come down. An older middle-aged man looked at his second brother on the stage and clenched his fists tightly under his sleeves. Their strength was still far from being comparable to the West City Lord. If they continued to fight, they were afraid that the second master of the Yu family wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and gritted his teeth as he stood up again. He held two sabers in his hands and injected spiritual power into them. He rushed forward, and the sharp saber energy attacked the calm and composed West City Lord at a speed that was too fast to be heard. Swoosh, swoosh. The West City Lord narrowed his eyes and quickly dodged to the side. Who knew that the moment he dodged, the other side of the blade suddenly slashed across. He only felt a whooshing sound as the blade slashed across his shoulder. The pain of the blade piercing into his flesh instantly came. Hiss! He took a deep breath and quickly retreated. The wound on his shoulder was so deep that his bones could be seen. Blood gushed out, and the warm blood quickly soaked his robes. The thick smell of blood also rushed into his nose. Glancing at the wound on his shoulder, a murderous look flashed across the West City Lord's eyes. He turned his palm under his sleeve, and a small saber flew out in the next moment and shot toward the second master of the Yu family. Swoosh! Second brother, be careful. Seeing this scene, the middle-aged man below the stage exclaimed, and his face changed greatly. However, they could not do anything and did not have the strength to fight with the West City Lord on the stage. Rushing forward, second master Yu only felt a sharp killing intent coming at him. There seemed to be a cold light shooting at him from the front, but he couldn't even see what it was. His body instinctively dodged, but who would have thought that the attack would be so fast that he wouldn't be able to dodge at all? Swoosh! The saber pierced the second master of the Yu family's heart and flew out of his body with a sharp swoosh, leaving a bloody hole in his chest. The second master of the Yu family could not withstand the force and was sent flying off the stage with a bang. Master! The woman below the stage cried out in alarm. Her face turned pale as blood rushed to her head and she fainted. Mother! Father! Second master! Second brother! The audience below the stage was in chaos, and there were chaotic cries of alarm mixed with deep worry and anxiety. The people of the Yu family rushed forward to help the second master of the Yu family, who had fallen to the ground with blood flowing out of his mouth. Second brother. Looking at the wound on his chest, the patriarch of the Yu family's voice trembled. He only had one brother, and now he was in such a state. Father. Second uncle. The crowd squeezed forward. A young man in his 20s supported his unconscious mother and looked at his dying father. His eyes reddened as he stared at the West City Lord on the stage. He pushed his mother to his cousin beside him and wanted to rush up the stage, but he was held back by the people beside him. Do you want to die? Now that your father is like this, do you still want him to worry? An old man shouted in a deep voice, his hand pressing down on the man's shoulder. Chapter 37-33. Uncle, my father. How is my father? The man asked in a trembling voice. Looking at his dying father, his body was trembling. His father was in the prime of his life. Was there really no hope for him? His wound is on his chest. You should carry him back and prepare for his funeral. The West City Lord stood on the stage with his hands behind his back as he looked down at the Yu family. Wei glanced at the dying second master. A look of disdain flashed across his eyes. Did he think he could fight with him? What a fool's dream. Dongji, second master Yu, who was being supported by the Yu family head, was bleeding from his mouth. He looked at his only son and said in a weak voice, Take care of your mother and the rest. Work hard on your cultivation. Don't seek revenge, cough, cough, cough. When Yudongji heard this, he saw his father cough violently. Blood kept flowing out of his mouth and out of his chest. He couldn't help but cry. Father, if you want to live, quickly send him to the South City Medicine Tower. A soft and languid voice rang out. Duan Yunha, who was on the stage, was shocked when he heard this voice. He quickly looked around, but he couldn't find the source of the voice. When Qi Kong heard his master's voice, he got up and walked off the stage. He took out an elixir and popped it into his second Master Yu's mouth. At the same time, he took out a bottle of medicine to stop the bleeding and sprinkled it on the bleeding wound. Then, he looked at the stunned Yu family members. What are you still standing there for? Do you want to watch him die? Qi Kang's voice was deep and powerful, jolting them back to their senses. Seeing that the wound had stopped bleeding in an instant, the Yu family's patriarch was shocked. He hurriedly helped his second brother up and carried him on his back. He said to Qi Kong, Many thanks, young Master Qi. As soon as he finished speaking, he quickly led the others to the medicinal pavilion. The South City Medicine Tower was a medicine tower that had risen to prominence in recent months. People knew about it because of the sky-high prices of its medicines. However, they didn't know that this medicine tower, which only sold medicine, actually had medical skills. As they watched the group of people leave in a hurry, the surrounding people couldn't help but look around. Who was talking just now? Where did that voice come from? Why didn't I see anyone? It sounds like a woman's voice. I don't know where it's coming from. That voice said that he wanted to be sent to the medicine tower in South City alive. Could it be that he didn't see that second Master Yu's blade had pierced right through his chest? Moreover, almost no one can afford the things in Medicine Tower, but I've never heard of anyone who knows medicine in the Medicine Tower. I don't know what kind of medicinal pill Qi Kong gave second Master Yu just now, but when he used his hemostatic medicine, the bleeding stopped immediately. I've never heard of such a powerful hemostatic medicine before. In an instant, everyone's attention was diverted. All of them landed on the calm man in a navy blue robe. The other party slowly walked down. At this moment, under everyone's gazes, he walked back to his seat with steady footsteps and sat down. He did not mind the crowd sizing him up. The West City governor furrowed his brows and scanned his surroundings. He couldn't find the source of the voice. However, he had confidence in himself. With that strike, it was impossible for the second son of the Yu family to survive. No one could save him. Chapter 37-34. Indeed, he had not misjudged him, and the sect master had not misjudged him. The people from the high firmament celestial sect looked at each other in surprise. They looked around, but could not find the source of the voice. However, what made them even more surprised was that the medicine in Qi Kang's hand had such a miraculous effect. The bleeding wound actually stopped after he sprinkled some medicine on it. Qi Kang, who made the medicine in your hand? The elder from the high firmament celestial sect asked. He was very curious about the medicine. Hearing the elder's question, the city lords and the others on the stage all looked at Qi Kang. Not only was this person's background mysterious, but the medicine in his hand was also very mysterious. The Spirit Mortal City was a big city, so it naturally had everything it wanted. Even rare and precious medicinal pills could be bought here as long as one could afford it. However, a medicine that could stop the bleeding just by sprinkling some medicine was unheard of. Qi Kang looked at them and saw the curiosity and inquiry in their eyes. He said in a low voice, "It was made by the ghost doctor." Ghost doctor? Everyone looked at each other. They had never heard of such an unfamiliar word. They had never heard of ghost doctor. Then where is the ghost doctor now? Elder Ling, Xiao asked again. No comment. Qi Kang looked away and did not look at them again. Is the ghost doctor a man or a woman? Where did she learn from? No comment. Hearing his words, the city lords on the stage looked at him. This Qi Kang did not even give face to the elder of the high firmament celestial sect. He was really arrogant. After being rebuffed, the elder felt as if he was suffocating in his heart. He felt very uncomfortable. The two supremacies next to him glanced at Qi Kong and frowned. They looked displeased. Obviously, they did not like his attitude. However, Duan Yunhe looked away and drank his tea. He did not say a word. The challenge on the stage continued. In the attic, Feng Jiu leaned leisurely on the soft couch, watching the scene below with a smile. Du Fan, who was at the side, ate a piece of pastry and asked, "Master, why do you want to save the second master of the Yu family?" If his master didn't speak up, then it would be difficult for the second master of the Yu family to make it to the medicinal pavilion. If I want to save him, then I'll save him. It's just a matter of saying a word, Feng Jiu said casually, then smiled. Just as well, Fan Lin can practice his skills. When Leng Hua heard this, a trace of a smile appeared between his brows. Having been by his master's side for so long, he more or less understood his master's temperament. They had a panoramic view of everything below, so it wasn't strange that their master wanted to save the second master of the Yu family. The challenge on the stage continued. The other two challenged the South City Lord and the North City Lord respectively. Their fates were better than the second master of the Yu family. They were defeated with only some injuries, which were not fatal. When it was Qi Kang's turn, the gazes of the city lords all landed on him. Currently, among the 4 city lords, only the East City Lord had not been challenged. This was because everyone knew that the East City Lord, who was in charge of the East City District, was the strongest of the 4. No one was willing to touch this hard nail. At this time, the city lords of the other 3 districts were all wondering which of the 3 of them would Qi Kong challenge. Chapter 37-35. Everyone was slightly surprised. They did not expect Qi Kong to challenge the East City Governor. For a moment, everyone's expression became subtle. Only Duan Yunhe glanced at the East City Governor and then looked at Qi Kong. No one knew what he was thinking. The East City Governor's eyes flashed. He glanced at Qi Kong, and an inexplicable smile appeared on his face. "Ha ha ha, you have guts." He stood up, laughed out loud, and stepped in front of Qi Kong. Qi Kong looked at him and said ambiguously, "East City Governor, you have guts too." Hearing this, the East City Governor's heart skipped a beat. He glanced at Qi Kong and sneered. "Qi Kong, is it? Then, let me see what you're made of." Before he could finish his sentence, the East City Governor was sent flying by a punch and fell heavily on the stage. The East City Governor spat out a mouthful of blood. His whole face was red. No one knew if it was because of the pain from the punch or because he was angry. Qi Kong rubbed his fist and walked closer step by step. His deep voice was calm, as usual. "I'm sorry. You talk too much. I couldn't help but test my strength on you. After all, the East City Governor added tea for me. You have to take this punch to know how strong it is." Hearing this, the faces of the people on and off the stage changed. They all whispered, "What does he mean? The East City Governor added tea for him? Is there a problem with the tea? How is that possible? The East City Governor is the strongest among the 4 city governors. Does he need it? That's hard to say. After all, Qi Kang's strength has been outstanding since the beginning. It's understandable that the East City Governor is afraid. Like I said, everything has a shameful side. For an election like this, if it's not because there's someone above covering for it, then it's because the people below used dirty tricks. How filthy!" The faces of the people from the high firmament celestial sect turned unsightly. The 3 city lords looked at the East City Lord in astonishment. They didn't expect the East City Lord to resort to such underhanded means. Being stared at and discussed by the crowd, the East City Lord's face turned from red to white. He glared at Qi Kong and said, "Don't slander me. What nonsense! You should know that I can skin you alive for slandering the City Lord." Qi Kong walked over with his hands behind his back and said, "You know very well whether I'm slandering you or not. However, I'm sorry to say that your medicine has no effect on me." Qi Kong looked at the East City Governor and said, "East City Governor, get up and continue the fight." The East City Governor's face turned pale. He clenched his teeth and stood up with one hand on his chest. Did he really want to lie on the stage forever? That punch was so powerful that it hurt from his chest to his back. It took him a while to catch his breath. He was already afraid of Duan Yunhe. Now that he fought with Duan Yunhe, he felt even more terrified. Duan Yunhe walked to the seat where Qi Kong was sitting. He picked up the half-drunk tea and sniffed it. Then, he brought the tea to the elder and the two venerables. "We can't smell it." The two venerables shook their heads. They didn't smell anything wrong. Chapter 37-36. It's true that there's a medicine in it that disperses cultivation. However, this medicine is colorless and tasteless. How do you know? The elder looked at Qi Kong and asked. He was very surprised. If he hadn't tasted it, he wouldn't have been able to smell the medicine in it. Not only did he know, but he also drank it, and nothing happened to him? What was the reason for this? When Qi Kong heard this, he glanced at the elder and said, "It seems that what you should be asking now is not how I know. You should be asking about the matter of the East City Lord drugging me, right?" Hearing this, the elder looked at the East City Lord and didn't speak for a while. The East City Lord's eyes flashed slightly. He stood up, clutching his chest. "I don't know what you're talking about. How can you say that I drug you? This is ridiculous." Qi Kong glanced at him and said in a low voice that contained the pressure and confidence of an expert, "You know very well whether you did or not. I don't need you to admit it, because it doesn't matter whether you admit it or not. You've already reached the end of the East City Lord's seat today." As soon as he finished speaking, he instantly attacked. His fist contained a powerful airflow and struck out fiercely. It was so fast that no one could see his fist at all. They could only hear the heavy sound of the fist hitting the body, followed by the sound of bones being broken. Hiss! The East City Lord, who had just stood up, screamed. His whole body was lifted up by the punch. His feet left the ground, and he knelt down with a plop. His whole body was lying forward because of the intense pain. He was in so much pain that he couldn't stand up. This punch caused the people from the High Firmament Immortal sect to suddenly stand up in shock. They had been staring at Qi Kong the entire time, but they didn't even see his movements clearly. From this, it could be seen just how fast he was. When the other three city lords saw this scene, their hearts couldn't help but jump. They secretly breathed a sigh of relief and thought to themselves, if Qi Kong had challenged them, I'm afraid they would have ended up like the East City Lord. Do you admit defeat? Qi Kong stood there and looked down at the East City Lord, who was kneeling in front of him. With his strength, it was easy for him to deal with the East City Lord. Moreover, he didn't show his full strength. Blood trickled from the corner of the East City Lord's mouth. He raised his head and looked at Qi Kong in front of him. There was a sinister look in his eyes. He gritted his teeth and said word by word, "I admit defeat. Impossible." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly leaped up. A cold light flashed in his hand as he attacked Qi Kong. Qi Kong frowned as the murderous aura rushed towards him. With a twist of his palm, a palm wind instantly shot out. That palm whistled through the air like a ferocious tiger with a force of 1,000 jin. P! With a loud bang, the East City Lord's shrill scream reached the sky. A mouthful of blood spurted out from his mouth and spilled on the ground like a red plum blossom. It was a ghastly sight. He flew out like a kite with a broken string. No one could save him. No one could save him in time. He fell off the stage under everyone's shocked gaze and landed among the onlookers. Hiss! Seeing this scene, the audience below the stage could not help but gasp. They looked at the East City Lord, who was on the verge of death after falling to the ground and could not even stand up. They only felt a wave of shock in their hearts, and their hearts palpitated with fear. Chapter 37-37. It was so quiet that even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. After a long while, Duan Yunhe coughed lightly and stood up. He looked at the crowd and said, "The City Lord election is held once every 5 years. From this moment on, the City Lord of the East District will be Qi Kong. The City Lords of the other 3 districts will remain unchanged." The voice that contained the aura of spirit force clearly entered everyone's ears, causing them to return to their senses. Some people below the stage looked at Chi Kong with a complicated expression. Some people had anticipation and joy in their eyes, and some people looked like they were waiting to watch a good show. Although the city lord election was held once every 5 years, the connections that the incumbent city lord had accumulated over the past 5 years were not something that could be easily overthrown. Moreover, where did Chi Kong come from? If he did not have a strong subordinate, it would be difficult for him to hold the position of city lord of the East District. At this time, the other people from the High Firmament Celestial sect also regained their senses. They looked at Chi Kong with mixed feelings in their eyes. After a while, the elder stroked his beard and walked forward. He said, "Chi Kong, I'll send someone to accompany you to the East District Governor's Mansion to hand over the position." He paused and looked at the city lord of the East District, who was on the verge of death. He sighed and ordered in a deep voice, "Carry him back first. Tell his family to move out of the East District Governor's Mansion by today." "Yes." The city guard respectfully responded and quickly carried the city lord of the East District away. At this time, the people in the East District Governor's Mansion who heard the news exclaimed in disbelief, "This is impossible. How is this possible? We've lived here for 10 years, and our master has always been the city lord. How could?" The messenger panted and said, "It's true. The election is over. The people from the High Firmament Celestial sect will accompany the new city lord to hand over the position." Hearing this, the people in the mansion felt their legs go weak and fell to the ground in disbelief. If the city lord was replaced, they would not be able to keep the wealth that they had accumulated over the years because of the city lord. Following the end of the competition, the crowd gradually dispersed. It had been many years since there had been a change of city lord. Now that the city lord had been replaced with Chi Kong, it was likely that the East District would undergo a major change in the near future. Thinking of this, some people were already thinking of finding time to visit the new East City Lord with gifts in the East City Lord's mansion. In the tea house, Feng Jiao and the others were not in a hurry to leave after watching the election. She lay on a soft couch and narrowed her eyes. She said to the people around her, "I'm going to sleep for a while. I'll go back later." Hearing this, the others quietly retreated. Lung Shuang brought a blanket to cover her and then stood guard by her side. As for the medicine building, the people of the Yu family were all standing guard in the backyard of the medicine building. When they heard the voice's reminder to send the people to the medicine building, they thought that they would be driven out. However, after an elegant man walked out and asked about the situation, they sent the people in. He had been in there for quite some time now. How is the situation? This caused the people guarding outside to be extremely worried. "Uncle, my father will be fine, right?" The man's face was filled with unconcealable worry. He looked at the tightly shut door without any movement. His heart was in turmoil, and he was restless. Chapter 37-38. Outside the medicine building, many people craned their necks to watch. Now that the election was over, many curious people gathered around the medicine building. They all wanted to know if the second master of the Yu family could be saved. In the backyard of the medicine building, Fan Lin pushed open the door and walked out. The people of the Yu family, who were waiting in the courtyard, quickly surrounded him when they saw him come out. "Young master, how is my second brother?" Patriarch Yu quickly stepped forward and asked. The others behind him all looked at Fan Lin nervously. Fan Lin glanced at them and revealed a refined smile. "Don't worry, his life is saved. However, he still needs to be carefully nursed back to health. He won't be able to get out of bed for at least half a month." Hearing this, the crowd couldn't help but cry tears of joy. They were ecstatic and felt that it was unbelievable. With such a serious injury, the young man in front of them was actually able to save him. One could imagine how brilliant his medical skills were. "Thank you, young master. Thank you." Patriarch Yu quickly cupped his hands and thanked him. Finally, a smile appeared on his face, and he said, "When we go back, we will definitely prepare a generous gift to thank you." Fan Lin smiled and told them what to pay attention to. He said, "He is now out of danger and is not suitable to be moved. Go in and see him. Leave 1 or 2 people to take care of him. Come back tomorrow even to pick him up." "Yes, yes, yes," We will listen to young master. Everyone quickly responded. Patriarch, you asked again. May I know young master's name? When they came to seek medical treatment, they only gave their own names and forgot to ask for the name of the person in front of them. My name is Fan Lin. He opened his mouth and told them to go in and see the person inside. Then he walked forward, picked some medicinal herbs, and had them boil them into medicine. Today was the election for the City Lord. He knew that Chi Kong intended to win the City Lord of the East. His master and the others had all gone to watch the fun. He had originally planned to go too, but he had not finished concocting the medicine on hand, so he stayed in the medicine building. He did not expect that his master would send him such an injured person. Thinking of the serious and fatal injury of the person inside, he shook his head and smiled. If he hadn't been by his master's side all this time, and if he hadn't learned a few things in Dan Wang's valley, he probably wouldn't have been able to heal that kind of wound. However, that person was lucky. With a word from his master, Chi Kong gave him medicine and stopped his bleeding. Otherwise, even if he was sent over, he wouldn't be able to save his life. Young master, there are a lot of people gathered outside, and they've been peeking their heads out. Some of them even came in to ask if the second master of the Yu family is dead. One of the medicine attendants stepped forward when he saw Fan Lin come out. Hearing this, Fan Lin smiled and said, Don't bother about them. Do what you need to do. Just do your part well. Yes, the medicine attendant replied before retreating. Although the people in the medicinal pavilion did not spread any news, it did not take long for the news to spread. The second master of the Yu family, who everyone thought was dead for sure, was saved and not dead. The people of the Yu family happily returned to the residence to report the news. The people in the city were also very surprised when they heard the news. What? The second master of the Yu family was saved? Who was it that saved him? How can he be saved with such injuries? Chapter 37-39. When the news that the second master of the Yu family had been rescued reached the West City Lord's ears, his face immediately darkened. In the hall of the City Lord's residence, he slammed the teacup in his hand on the table and shouted, Men, City Lord. The city guard quickly stepped forward. What is the background of the South City's medicine tower? Go and investigate. Yes. The city guard quickly retreated. In the East City District's City Lord's mansion, the people from the High Firmament Immortal Sect accompanied Chi Kong to the City Lord's mansion. After entering the City Lord's mansion, two other people accompanied Chi Kong to the City Lord's mansion, while the elder took Duan Yunhe to a secluded place. Yunhe, do you know who this Chi Kong is? The elder looked at Duan Yunhe and asked. Seeing that Duan Yunhe's eyes flashed and he remained silent, the elder snorted and said, Don't use the same excuse as before to tell me that you don't know. If you didn't know, would you have us accompany him to the City Lord's mansion? If you didn't know, would you be so protective of him? Hearing this, Duan Yunhe sighed and said, Head elder, I'm only doing this for the good of the immortal sect. You've also seen that Chi Kong is not an ordinary person. Since we can help him, why should we put on airs? Then why don't you tell me who he is that you're so afraid of him? The first elder asked again. Don't tell me you're not going to say anything after returning to the sect? Or are you not going to tell anyone? The head elder's face darkened, and he looked at Duan Yunhe with displeasure. Hearing this, Duan Yunhe pondered for a moment before saying, He's one of the subordinates of that woman in red. What? The head elder didn't know who Duan Yunhe was referring to. After all, it had been a few months, and he had long forgotten about that matter. He killed Peak Master Run and crippled a dozen immortal sect disciples. As Duan Yunhe spoke, he looked at the astonished first elder and continued, That Chi Kong is one of the red-clothed woman's subordinates. As I said before, the dozen or so subordinates of the red-clothed woman are all outstanding men and women. They aren't ordinary guards. The great elder's face was filled with astonishment. The shock in his heart was no less than when he heard that Peak Master Run had been killed. He had seen Chi Kong today as well, and his actions carried the aura of a superior. Moreover, his strength was restrained, and his cultivation was unfathomable. Even the disciples of aristocratic families would find it difficult to compare to a person with such a bearing. However, Such a person was actually only one of the subordinates of the red-clothed woman. When he thought of this, his emotions instantly became chaotic. One of his subordinates? If one of them was already so powerful, then what about the others? He already knew that the red-clothed woman who had killed Peak Master Run and the others were very powerful. But he didn't expect that when he saw it with his own eyes, this kind of shock went straight to the depths of his heart, causing him to be unable to calm down. Did you recognize him today? The great elder calmed himself down and looked at Duan Yunhe with a complicated expression. Yes, Duan Yunhe replied and said, moreover, that red-clothed woman was also watching the city lord election today. The mysterious female voice that spoke was that red-clothed woman's voice. Therefore, I'm thinking that the medicine tower that she spoke of is also one of her people. Chapter 3740. Duan Yunhe's expression changed slightly as he said, there should be some of her people in the medicine tower. We have to report this matter to the sect master. The head elder calmed down for a while before he paused and continued. Also, keep an eye on Chi Kong. He came here alone, so you should stay and help him with the handover. Since he's the woman in red's people, try to befriend him as much as possible. I won't stay any longer and need to return to the sect. Hearing this, Duan Yunhe nodded and said, I understand. On the other side, the head elder left first, leaving behind 3 people to help with the handover. On the other side, Fengjiu slept in the tea house's attic until evening. When she was about to go back, she heard from Lung Shuang that Fan Lin had arrived and was waiting outside. Let him in, Fengjiu said. She stood up, stretched her waist, and moved a little. Lung Shuang walked outside and called out. Not long after, he walked in with Fan Lin. Master, Fan Lin called out with a refined smile on his face. That second master of the Yu family has been rescued. He's still lying in a medicine pavilion and can't be moved, so I told them to bring him back tomorrow evening. He also took advantage of this time to come over and inform his master. His injuries were fatal. Since you were able to save him, it shows that your medical skills have improved a lot. Fengjiu smiled and looked at Fan Lin, who had just walked in, and said, You saved this person from the Yu family today, so you'll probably be busy from now on. I'll take advantage of this opportunity. Fan Lin said. He knew that the medicine tower's reputation would also spread after today's incident. At that time, there would definitely be many people coming to visit. You can stay in the medicine tower tonight. I'll ask Hui Lang to accompany you tonight. Fengjiu couldn't help but smile as she said this. She brushed her clothes and walked out. I'll go back first. If there's anything else, we'll talk about it at the residence. Ask Hui Lang to accompany him at the medicine tower tonight. Hearing this, Fan Lin couldn't help but be stunned. What did this mean? However, before he could ask, he saw that his master had already walked out, so he hurriedly followed. Master, you want me and Gray Medicine to stay at the medicinal building tonight? He thought of something and couldn't help but ask. Is it because the second master of the Yu family is there? Fengjiu went downstairs and walked to the back door as he replied. Well, since he's been saved, we shouldn't let him die so easily. At least, we can use him to make your name known. You guys stay there tonight. Seeing his master enter the carriage from the back door, Fan Lin hurriedly pulled Lung Hua aside and asked, Master, what do you mean by this? Is someone trying to harm Second Master Yu? Lung Hua smiled and said warmly, he was injured by the West City Master. Now that you've rescued him, I don't think the West City Master will let this go. You guys stay here tonight. Maybe there will be some movement. Hearing this, Fan Lin suddenly understood. He watched his master and the others leave. When he saw Hui Lang standing to the side, he smiled at him and said, Then I'll have to trouble you tonight. Hui Lang rubbed his wrist and said, Just treat it as practice. Du Fan walked out from the back, gently fanning himself with the fan in his hand, and said, They're taking care of Master in the residence, and you two are at the medicine tower. Then I'll go to the East City Master's residence and see if Chi Kong needs any help. Chapter 3741. Upon hearing this, Du Fan's eyes flashed as he said, Since we have nothing to do, let's take a walk. Thus, after Du Fan left the tea house, he walked to the main street and bought some sauced meat to go with his wine. Then, he carried it to the East City Governor's mansion. As for Fan Lin and Hui Lang, one was in the open while the other was in the dark. After half a day, Chi Kong was almost done with the handover at the East City Governor's mansion. With the help of the people from the Soaring Firmament Celestial Sect, the handover was even easier. When Du Fan arrived at the East City Governor's mansion with the sauced meat, the sky had already darkened. When he arrived at the governor's mansion, he saw Chi Kong escorting the other two supremacies from the Soaring Firmament Celestial Sect out. He stood at the side and did not walk up to them. Duan Yunhe had been looking for an opportunity to chat with Chi Kong, so he stayed behind. Thus, when they saw the two supremacies off, they saw Du Fan standing not too far away. "Why are you here?" Chi Kong asked when he saw Du Fan coming over. Du Fan waved the braised meat in his hand and walked up to Duan Yunhe with a smile. "I bought some braised meat from the Eastern Street and came over to celebrate you becoming the city lord." He swept his gaze around and smiled at Duan Yunhe. "We meet again." Duan Yunhe nodded slightly. "I didn't expect to meet you here. After killing the peak master of the Celestial Sect and annihilating a few clans, no one would expect them to come to the Spirit Celestial City near the Soaring Firmament Celestial Sect. Since we've met, why don't we have a drink? The East Courtyard has been vacated. Let's go there," Chi Kong said and walked in with them. As for the West City Governor, his face darkened when he heard the news from the city guard. He sat on the main seat and looked at the city guard kneeling before him. Suddenly, he picked up the teacup on the table and threw it at the city guard. Clang! "Bastard! After investigating for half a day, you tell me you can't find out where they came from? Is there anyone in the city who can't be found? What a bastard! Get out!" He cursed angrily and smashed the teacup on the city guard's head, causing blood to seep out. The city guard could only lower his head, his body trembling. He didn't dare to utter a single word. Only when he heard the city guard tell him to scram did he hurriedly retreat. Unable to suppress the anger in his chest, he walked outside with his hands behind his back. Looking at the sky outside, his eyes were cold and bloodthirsty. If he wanted to kill someone, even if the King of Hell didn't accept him, he would still kick him into the King of Hell's palace. The night grew darker and quieter. In the medicine pavilion, Fan Lin was concocting medicine, while in the rear courtyard, the second master of the Yu family was being guarded and taken care of by several members of the Yu family. As for Hui Lang, he was hidden in the shadows, keeping an eye on the surroundings. Although it was already late at night, the people of the Yu family were still busy. They were busy feeding and changing the medicine, and they also had to pay attention to what Fan Lin said to see if the body had a fever or if the wound had become inflamed in the latter half of the night. Because of this, they didn't know that several figures had sneaked into the medicine pavilion under the cover of the night and were heading towards the rear courtyard. However, before they could reach the rear courtyard, the four cultivators who had sneaked in were silently dealt with by Hui Lang. When Hui Lang dragged the four corpses to the front and threw them to the side, the medicine attendants in the medicine pavilion were dumbfounded. Their faces turned pale and their eyes widened as they looked at the corpses. "What are you waiting for? Drag them away and deal with them." Hui Lang glanced at the two attendants and coldly ordered them. "Al, how do we deal with this?" Chapter 3742. Grey Wolf glanced at them and said, "Go find Fan Lin and get some medicine to destroy the corpse." After saying this, he no longer paid attention to them and went to the back of the courtyard to continue to squat on the tree. When the two medicine attendants heard this, they quickly dragged them away and went to find Fan Lin. As for the West City Lord, he was waiting in his mansion for the people he sent out to report back. Who would have thought that after midnight, the four people he sent out did not return? This made him frown slightly, and his heart was burning with anger. What kind of guards could there be in a small medicine building? The people from a Yu family were even less of a threat. Although the strength of the people he sent out was not the best, it was more than enough to deal with the people from the small medicine building and the Yu family. However, they had not returned yet. Could it be that something had happened? Thinking of this, he walked up and down in the hall with his hands behind his back. Finally, he decided to go and see for himself. If something really happened, he would come out and directly kill all the people in the medicine building to vent the anger in his heart. He changed into his night clothes and covered his face. Then, he went to the medicine building alone. At midnight, it was time to sleep. The street outside was quiet, and only the lights in front of some houses and shops were still on. He found a medicine building and saw that it was still brightly lit. He narrowed his eyes and planned to sneak in from the back. Therefore, he deliberately went around to the back and came to the wall. With a light tap of his toes, he leaped onto the top of the wall and squatted down to size up the situation inside. However, at this moment, he was hit hard on the back of his neck. He was shocked and felt his vision go black. He fainted and fell down the wall. Bang! Bang! Two loud sounds were heard. The first sound was like a muffled sound of a stick hitting the body, and the second sound was the sound of a body falling to the ground. Who is it? The sound startled the Yu family members who were guarding the courtyard. They looked back and were dumbfounded. They saw a black figure falling down the wall and fainting on the ground. On the wall, another black figure was holding a thick wooden stick and patting it. Obviously, the person who fell was knocked down by the black figure on the wall. He's a member of my medicine tower. Fan Lin walked out of nowhere, wearing a sky blue robe. It was obvious that he had already changed. Huilang glanced at Fan Lin before jumping down from above. He lifted the black veil covering the man's face and couldn't help but sneer. Isn't this the West City Lord? Fan Lin raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at the person on the ground. He was a little surprised. The West City Lord was the city lord of the West City District. How could he come here personally and be defeated by Huilang so easily? It seemed that he had underestimated them. Otherwise, with his strength, even if he wasn't a match for them, he would at least be able to exchange a few blows with them. When the Yu family's people heard that it was the West City Lord, they couldn't help but be startled. After looking at each other, they quickly stepped forward to take a look. Sure enough, the person lying on the ground was the West City Lord. One of the Yu family's people showed hatred in his eyes as he gritted his teeth and said, "I'll kill him." As soon as his voice fell, he took out a dagger from his sleeve and was about to stab the fainted West City Lord on the ground, but he was pulled back by the people around him. Chapter 3743. The middle-aged man from the Yu family pulled the person beside him aside and asked Fan Lin, "Master Fan, why is the West City Lord here?" Fan Lin stood there, looking like an elegant, noble young master. With a smile on his face, he said, "When the West City Lord heard that your second master was still alive, he wanted to kill him. Earlier tonight, he had already sent a few cultivators over, but we quietly took care of them. I guess it's because those people didn't return to report, so he came over personally." Although he spoke so casually, the members of the Yu family felt their hearts jump out of their chests. It turned out that the West City Lord had not given up and wanted to kill their second master. And he had already sent a few people here. If they hadn't told them, they wouldn't have known at all. Thinking of this, they couldn't help but feel a little scared. At the same time, they were secretly shocked. The people of this medicine tower were unfathomable. They were able to quietly get rid of the people sent by the West City Lord. Even the West City Lord, who was vicious and ruthless, was hit by a stick and fell here. One can imagine their strength. Looking at the unconscious West City Lord on the ground, the Yu family members' eyes flashed. If it weren't for the fact that this was the medicine tower, if they killed the West City Lord, it would cause trouble for the medicine tower. They really wanted to kill the West City Lord with their own hands. After thinking for a while, the middle-aged man from the Yu family asked, "Master Fan, how do you plan to deal with the West City Lord? Kill him directly?" Huilang looked at Fan Lin and asked, if they could kill the West City Lord, he would give him another hit with the stick and make sure he stopped breathing. Fan Lin shook his head. "You can't kill him. He is the West City Lord, and the power behind him is not small. If he dies here, I'm afraid that trouble will follow." It wasn't that they were afraid of the West City Lord's revenge, but if a city lord died, the people of the Lingxiao immortal sect would definitely investigate. At that time, they were afraid of causing trouble for their master, especially when their master was about to give birth in a few months. They couldn't cause any trouble here. Don't kill him. When he wakes up, he will still deal with the medicine tower. As Grey Wolf spoke, he waved the wooden stick in his hand. He suddenly felt that this wooden stick was quite handy to use. Fan Lin smiled. No, he won't dare to deal with us openly. When he heard this, Grey Wolf thought for a moment and said, all right, since I'm not going to kill him, I'll teach him a lesson. I'll teach him a lesson that he'll never forget. He chuckled and reached out to seal the acupoints on the unconscious West City Lord's body. Then, he dragged him with one hand and walked towards the front building. The two attendants in the building had personally dealt with the corpses. At this moment, they were still thinking about the sizzling sound that came from the corpses when the medicinal liquid was sprinkled on them. Then, the large corpses turned into a pool of blood in front of them. Thinking about this scene, their hearts couldn't help but shiver. They had been working here for a few months, and only today did they know that their cultured and refined young master could actually concoct such a frightening and terrifying liquid to destroy corpses and evidence. Although they were also cultivators, their cultivation wasn't high, and they weren't very old. This was the first time they had encountered such a situation. At this moment, their hearts were still beating wildly. Chapter 3744. The body of the person being dragged was rubbing against the ground, not moving at all. If they hadn't seen his chest rise and fall as they approached, they would have thought that it was another corpse. However, when they looked up and saw the face of the West City Lord, they were so frightened that their eyes widened and their mouths fell open. Isn't this the West City Lord? Go about your business. Hui Lang glanced at the two of them and directly dragged the West City Lord to a corner. There, he took everything from him and took off his clothes, leaving only his underpants. When the two medicine attendants saw this scene, they were so frightened that their little hearts thumped. This was the West City Lord. If he was dead, it would be one thing, but he was not dead. What if he woke up? Just as they were thinking, they heard the black-clothed man in the corner shout at them. You two, go to Fan Lin and get some ink that can't be washed off. The two of them looked at each other. There was such a thing? Puzzled, they walked to the backyard. Not long after, they really came back with ink and a pen and handed it to Hui Lang. The next morning, the entire Spirit Immortal City was in an uproar. This was because a piece of news had spread throughout the entire Spirit Immortal City early in the morning. Almost everyone knew that the West City Lord had been hung upside down on the competition stage. He had been stripped down to his underpants and had a turtle drawn on his face. Once the news spread, the people in the 4 districts of the Spirit Immortal City were shocked. That was the West City Lord. Who was so bold? Who had such great ability to humiliate the West City Lord like this? The small building in the middle of the lake was different from other places. It was quiet, very suitable for nurturing the baby. Early in the morning, Fengjiu walked around the mansion. After moving around, she came to a pavilion and sat down. Master, the West City Lord was tricked by Hui Lang. I'm afraid he won't let it go. Moreover, the incident happened in the medicine tower. After today, the medicine tower will be targeted by the West City Lord. Lung Hua poured a glass of water for her and then stood to the side, telling her about the news that had spread outside in the morning. Don't worry, they will take care of it. Fengjiu drank the water in his cup and said, What's more, he has already fallen into the hands of Hui Lang. If this West City Lord knows what's good for him, he should swallow this loss. If he doesn't know what's good for him and wants to make a move on them, they can just drag West City Lord down and push someone else up. Hearing this, Lung Hua couldn't help but smile. This was their master. No matter what, he was always so confident. By the way, Master, we've received news that there are 3,000-year-old elixirs being auctioned in the city today. One of them seems to be the single-leaf rainbow flower that Master asked us to look for. I plan to go take a look later. If it's really the single-leaf rainbow flower, I'll bid for it. An auction in the city. Fengjiu rested his chin on his hand and said, I've been here for so long and haven't really gone out. Since there's an auction, I'll go with you. There are many people there. Now that Master is pregnant with little Master, are you afraid? Lung Hua was a little hesitant. Fengjiu smiled. It's okay. The baby is very normal now. It's okay even if he fights with people, let alone just go and watch the fun. Chapter 3745. Master, have a bowl of porridge. Lung Shuang came over with the porridge and placed the tray in front of Fengjiu. Fengjiu ate the porridge and seemed to think of something. She said to Lung Shuang, Fan Lin and Hui Lang will probably stay in the medicine building for a while. Later, let Qin Xian go to the medicine building as well. Let her learn from Fan Lin how to make medicine. Yes, Lung Shuang replied. She stood there and did not leave. After arriving here, the people around her master began to expand their power. Only she and her brother, Lung Hua, stayed by her master's side. He was always in the dark and rarely appeared in front of others. Although the others came back sometimes, most of them had to patrol the properties. Even Bai Qingxing was in charge of one of the properties and was responsible for gathering information. After being here for a few months, the only thing she was worried about now was her master's delivery. She only hoped that when the child was born, her master would have a safe and smooth delivery. After Lung Hua arranged everything, Fengjiu took the two of them out. The others wanted to follow, but were rejected by her. After all, in addition to Lung Hua and Lung Shuang, Yi was in the dark. It was enough. The news of West City Lord being hung upside down and stripped naked spread like crazy in the city. In the West City Lord's mansion, West City Lord was rescued and brought back to the mansion. He rubbed his face until it turned red, but he could not get rid of the damn tortoise pattern on his face. Bang! In a fit of anger, he picked up the wash basin and smashed it on the ground. The water in the basin splashed everywhere, instantly turning the room into a mess. He angrily strode out, but as if he had thought of something, he went back into the room and rummaged through it. Finally, he took out a mask and put it on his face. Only then did he leave with a sinister look on his face. Gather the people for me. I'm going to destroy that medicine tower. In the West City Lord's hall, his malicious eyes were filled with ruthlessness and bloodthirstiness. His sinister voice was filled with a monstrous rage. Every time he thought about how he had made such a big fool of himself and how everyone in the city was talking about and laughing at him, he could not wait to exterminate everyone in the medicine tower. Leave no one alive. Killing intent filled the hall, causing everyone in the hall to hold their breaths. Among them, 2 old men and 2 middle-aged men looked at each other and signaled each other to step forward. What are you waiting for? Immediately gather everyone in the West City Prefecture. I want everyone in the medicine tower to die. He clenched his fist and slammed it heavily on the table. His voice, which contained the aura of spiritual power, almost spread throughout the entire West City Lord mansion. Seeing this, the 2 old men sighed and stepped forward. City Lord, this is not appropriate. Inappropriate? The West City Lord narrowed his eyes. His malicious gaze seemed to want to swallow the old man alive. You think it's okay to let a small medicine house humiliate me like this? It's not that I don't know who did it. I know who did it, so why can't I kill him? Do you want to swallow this anger? His tone was heavier than the previous one. His voice was filled with thunderous anger, and it was like a muffled thunder that smashed into everyone's hearts, causing their eardrums to hurt. A powerful coercion accompanied his anger, causing everyone in the hall to break out in cold sweat. Even sitting down, they felt frightened. Chapter 3746. Hearing this, the West City Lord's malicious eyes narrowed. What do you mean? The 2 old men did not speak directly, but said to the others in the hall, You can leave first. We have something to discuss with the City Lord. When everyone heard this, they could not help but look at the City Lord. The West City Lord looked at the 2 old men and finally waved his hand. Leave. Yes. Everyone responded and secretly breathed a sigh of relief. After everyone else left, the West City Lord stared at the 2 old men and said, Speak. I'd like to see what you can say. No matter what they said, he would definitely not take this lying down. The 2 old men looked at each other, and then one of them asked, The City Lord went to the medicine tower to kill the second master of the Yu family? Hearing this question directly, the West City Lord's eyes flashed slightly. He stared at the old man and said, That's right. The second master of the Yu family deserves to die. The medicine tower that saved him deserves to die even more. City Lord, you went there secretly. If this matter is exposed, I'm afraid that the City Lord's reputation will plummet. This matter can't be brought up directly. What's more, the medicine tower is full of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. The City Lord really doesn't need to sacrifice himself or even the power of the entire West City Guard for this. The other old man on the other side sighed softly and said, with the City Lord's strength, if the medicine tower was an ordinary place, the City Lord alone could destroy it with one hand. But obviously, this medicine tower is not an ordinary place. There are crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Even the City Lord is no match for them. If we face them directly, we can only be at a disadvantage, and the consequences are unimaginable. Listening to the words of the two, the West City Lord's malicious eyes flashed slightly. He was silent and did not speak, as if he was thinking about their words. After a long time, he calmed down and leaned back in the chair behind him, asking, "What do you think?" The old man saw that his tone was slightly relaxed and hurriedly said, "City Lord, we have ways to get rid of them. There's no need to do it personally. Yes, we can borrow a knife to kill them, and we can also buy their lives." The other person also said. Hearing this, the West City Governor's mood gradually improved. He looked at the two of them and nodded. "Well said. If you want to kill them, why would you need to make a move against the forces of the West City? If this City Lord wants to kill them, there are plenty of ways." As soon as he finished speaking, a wisp of ghastly killing intent flashed through his malicious eyes, and he said, "Then I'll leave this matter to you. The top assassin organization is Night Flame. Go buy their lives. I want them to bring their heads to me. Don't worry, City Lord. We will contact Yi Yin as soon as possible to buy the lives of those people in the medicine building," the two old men said. After cupping their hands, they left. On the other side, in the East City Lord's mansion, everything in the mansion was being cleaned up. The clansmen of the previous City Lord had already moved out early in the morning. Inside and outside, Chi Kong had ordered people to reorganize everything. In addition, Du Fan was here to help, so it was much more convenient to deal with everything. After finally resting for a while, Chi Kong and Du Fan found a pavilion to sit down and discuss some matters. Before they finished their tea, they saw Duan Yunhe walking towards them. Chapter 37:47. Du Fan and Chi Kong raised their eyebrows at the same time. They looked at the confident Duan Yunhe and asked, "What do you mean?" Duan Yunhe walked forward and sat down before he said, "The city governor of the Western District has an elder who's the peak master of the High Firmament Celestial Sect. Aren't you afraid that he'll take revenge on you for attacking him?" Chi Kong had been busy with the matters in the city governor's mansion and had not heard anything about what had happened outside. Although Du Fan did not know what had happened, he remembered that his master had sent Hui Lang to the medicine pavilion when Duan Yunhe mentioned the Western District Governor. What happened to the city governor of the Western District? Du Fan took a sip of tea and asked curiously. Duan Yunhe glanced at the two of them and paused for a moment before he said, "This morning, the city governor of the Western District was hung on the competition stage. He was stripped down to his underwear and a turtle was drawn on his face. The news is spread like wildfire. Everyone is trying to find out who did it." "Oh, so that's how it is." Du Fan smiled, but there was no surprise on his face. Only their people would do such a thing. Duan Yunhe shook his head when he saw that the two of them did not seem to care about this matter. He said, "I'm here to bid farewell. I still have some matters to attend to, so I won't be staying here for long. If you need any help in the future, you can look for me." He handed his identity jade token to them as he spoke. Chi Kong thought for a moment before he accepted the identity jade token. "Thank you." Although he did not think that he would need it much, he still owed Duan Yunhe a favor. Duan Yunhe seemed to have something to say, but he did not know how to say it. In the end, he stood up and said, "We'll meet again someday. We'll send you off," Chi Kong said as he stood up. Du Fan also stood up when he saw this. He smiled at Duan Yunhe and said, "We don't know each other anymore. I'll treat you to a drink the next time we meet." Hearing this, Duan Yunhe smiled. "Then I'll remember it." Chi Kong and Du Fan walked him out of the city lord's mansion. After watching his figure disappear into the distance, the two of them returned. As they walked, Chi Kong asked, "Who did this?" Who else could it be? It must be Hui Lang. Du Fan gently fanned the fan in his hand and said, "I thought that the West City Lord would only send someone over. I didn't expect him to go over himself. It's already good that Hui Lang didn't cripple him. After all, he's the Lord of the city. You've seen how many things have happened here. A city lord has a lot of forces behind him. It's easy to cripple him, but it's not easy to deal with the trouble behind him. They probably thought of this point, so they didn't kill him." Chi Kong walked inside with his hands behind his back, slowly analyzing the situation. Although you've taken over here, if you want the people under you to obey you, you'll probably have to put in a lot of effort. Do you need me to ask Master to send someone over to help you? Du Fan asked. Then just send a lot of people over. I'm preparing to retrain the city guards in the East District and pick out a group of elite guards. The two of them chatted as they walked. When they returned to the pavilion, they sat down and continued to discuss matters. Chapter 3748. Knock, knock. A sound came from outside the door. Lung Hua walked forward and opened the door halfway. Looking at the middle-aged manager outside, he asked gently, "What's the matter?" The manager of the Southern City Auction House looked at the half-open door and the gentle man standing inside. His eyes flashed slightly as he smiled and said, "Young Master Lung, I've sent you a number plate and a list of items to be auctioned later." From the corner of his eye, he faintly caught a glimpse of a red figure in the room. According to the people in the auction house, the Madam in Red was pregnant. Her face was covered by a light veil, so her appearance couldn't be seen clearly. However, her bearing were extraordinary. Beside her were this young Master Lung and a woman in black. "Thank you." Lung Hua took it and glanced at the items in his hand. "If there's anything else you need, just let me know." The middle-aged manager bowed and left without looking too much. After he left, Lung Hua closed the door and brought the items to the table in front of Fengjiu. "Master, this is the list of items to be auctioned." Fengjiu propped her head with one hand and flipped through the items recorded on the list with the other. When she saw a few rare spiritual herbs, she couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. This Spirit Immortal City is really extraordinary. They even have the means to get such spiritual herbs. After looking through the items that were going to be auctioned, she told Lung Hua to bid for the items that were going to be auctioned off. However, while they were waiting for the auction to begin, they heard angry shouts and comforting voices coming from outside. "My family has been working with you for so long, and now you're saying that you don't have a private room? Is this how you do business?" In the corridor, a man in his 30s dressed in brocade roared angrily at the middle-aged manager. Beside him were two young men, a middle-aged man, and 3 servants. Young Masterly, I'm really sorry. You know that our private rooms have to be reserved in advance. There are so many people, and we only have 4 private rooms. Now that there are distinguished guests inside, we really can't make room for you." The middle-aged manager maintained a smile on his face. As he comforted them, he said, "How about this? Please take a seat on the auction stage. I'll arrange a seat for you at the front. If it were any other day, it would be fine. But today, I'm here with my friends. How can I sit down there?" The man in embroidered clothes didn't appreciate it. His gaze swept across the 4 private rooms in front of him. He saw that there were 2 guards standing at the door of 3 of them, and only one of them was empty. Seeing this, his eyes flickered. As he walked toward the private room, he asked, "Who's inside?" As he spoke, he extended his hand to push open the door. However, when a middle-aged manager who had been standing to the side with a smile saw this, his figure flashed and instantly blocked the door of the private room, stopping the man from pushing open the door. "Young Master Li, this is not appropriate. It will disturb our guests." As the middle-aged manager spoke, the smile on his face faded a little. He looked at them and said, "The auction is about to begin. If young Master Li doesn't want to sit down below, you can leave first." "Are you chasing us away?" Young Master Li's face darkened, and his tone was filled with strong dissatisfaction. Chapter 37:49. Hearing these words, young Master Li raised his chin and sneered. Today, I'm here on my father's orders to accompany a few old friends. Since that's the case, we can only invite young Master Li and the others to the first floor. The middle-aged steward gestured for them to enter. Seeing this, a man at the side smiled and said, Steward, we really have something to discuss. How about this? Can you ask the guests in this private room if they can let us have this private room? We can give them some compensation. The middle-aged steward's face twitched slightly when he heard this. He didn't even raise his eyes to look at the man. He just narrowed his eyes and gestured for them to enter. Why would a guest who could come here and be invited into a private room care about some so-called compensation? If he didn't even understand this point, he really couldn't be bothered to talk to him. Seeing that the middle-aged steward didn't move at all as if he was asleep, didn't say a word, and didn't even raise his eyes, the man who spoke couldn't help but feel embarrassed. His face turned slightly red, and just as he was about to step forward, the middle-aged man pressed on his shoulder. Nephew Li, we're actually forcing you today. After all, there are no more private rooms available. Let's go to the first floor. It's fine. We're here for the auction, but for this private room. If we make a fuss, it'll make things difficult for the auction house. The middle-aged man smiled with a kind expression. He looked at the middle-aged steward and said with a smile, Then I'll have to trouble the steward to make the arrangements for us. Hearing this, the middle-aged steward raised his eyes to look at him and replied with a smile. That's what I should do. It's no trouble at all. He then said to the group, Everyone, please follow me. When the people in the private rooms heard the commotion outside, some shook their heads and ignored it. Some chuckled and threw it to the back of their minds, and some even looked at it with contempt. In Fengjiu's private room, it was still quiet. This was because Fengjiu, who was originally sitting, was lying down on the soft couch. She squinted her eyes and smiled lazily like a cat. When the time came, the auction also began. Fengjiu was lying down, facing the auction stage. So when the first item was placed on the stage, she looked at it. Although he was a bit far away, he was still a cultivator with a decent cultivation base. With his divine sense locked onto the object, he was able to roughly see what it was. Because she had instructed Lung Hua to bid for the item, she just watched. She watched as the auctioneer on the stage announced the starting price, followed by the sound of people bidding one after another. 23,000 crystals. Lung Hua called out the price. His voice came out from the window. However, the people below could not see him, but he could see the people below. 23,500 crystals. Someone raised the bid by 500 crystals, but Lung Hua's next bid silenced the crowd. 30,000 crystals, Lung Hua said, his voice spreading throughout the auction house. 30,000 crystal stones going once. 30,000 crystal stones going twice. 30,000 crystal stones going thrice. Again, the auctioneer looked at the private room on the second floor and said with a smile, This Millennium Warm Jade was won by the guest in private room number 1 upstairs. Next is the second item to be auctioned. It's a 6th-level mid-grade spiritual medicine. The starting price is 3,000 crystal stones, and each increment must be no less than 500 crystals. Chapter 37:50. 30,000 crystal stones was not a small amount, and the person in the private room on the second floor had used 30,000 crystal stones to buy a piece of 1,000-year-old warm jade that was only the size of an egg. That direct increase in price and that gentle and indifferent voice made people feel that 30,000 crystal stones was nothing in his eyes. To be able to spend so much money, it was likely that he was from a large family in the city. They looked sympathetically at the few young men sitting at the side. Just now, it was the young master of the Li family who was bidding for the Millennium Warm Jade. Unfortunately, with their family background, there was no way they could compete with a first-rate family. Not long after, the middle-aged steward personally came over with the Millennium Warm Jade to handle the handover. Lung Shuang opened the door and let him in. When the middle-aged steward came in, he saw that the veil on the woman in red's face had been removed. With just a glance, he was so shocked that he did not dare to take another look. "Madam, young Master Long, this is the Millennium Warm Jade. Please examine it." He placed the Millennium Warm Jade on the tray in front of Fengjiu and bent down slightly to make it easier for Fengjiu to examine it. Fengjiu lifted the red cloth and took out the egg-sized piece of Millennium Warm Jade to examine. The warm feeling in her hand was very comfortable. The jade contained a pure aura of spiritual power. Although the jade was not big, the jade was transparent like water, and the emerald green color was very pleasing. She played with it in her hand and smiled. "Not bad. This is the Millennium Warm Jade. It's full of spiritual power and is worth the money." After holding in her hand, she realized that this piece of jade was not expensive at 30,000 crystal stones. Something like this could only be encountered and not sought. If she carried it with her and nurtured it for a few years, it would be even more nourishing. As long as Master likes it. Lung Hua smiled and said to the steward, "Do I pass the bill here or at the counter? I'll have to trouble young Master Lung to walk a few steps. Because the bill is at the counter, I'm only responsible for delivering the auction item to the guest for inspection." Hearing this, Lung Hua nodded and said to Lung Shuang, "Sister, I'll have to trouble you to settle the bill. I still want to bid for the next item." "Okay," Lung Shuang replied. At this time, Lung Hua looked at the manager again and said, "We have a few items to bid for. Can you ask my sister at the counter to record the bill? We can pay after we bid for the items and leave." Of course, that's not a problem. "Miss, you can sign a contract with me first, and you can pay the bill after it's over." The butler hurriedly said with a smile as he gestured to Lung Shuang, "Miss, please." The steward was surprised. So they were a pair of siblings? Lung Shuang followed the steward out, while Lung Hua looked at the items being auctioned on the stage. As the bids from below grew higher and higher, fewer and fewer people were bidding. He saw the opportunity and opened his mouth to bid again. Lung Shuang, who followed the steward out, went to the counter on the first floor and went through the formalities. She took out 30,000 crystal stones and paid for the Millennium Warm Jade first. When the middle-aged steward saw her take out the crystal stones from her space, his eyelids twitched, and then he hurriedly helped her pay the bill. Finally, he smiled and said, "Miss, that's enough. You can pay for the rest when you leave." Wasn't this woman a servant? She could actually take out 30,000 crystal stones at once. How incredible. Okay. Chapter 3751. "Ah, I'm so sorry, miss. I didn't mean to bump into you." The man repeatedly apologized, but there was no trace of apology on his face. Instead, there was a hint of flirtation in his eyes. Lung Shuang's face turned cold, and a murderous aura burst out from her body. The strong, murderous aura startled the middle-aged steward, and he looked at her in astonishment. He was just about to send her back when he saw the three men walking over while chatting and laughing. It seemed that he had stumbled and bumped into her, and that man had taken advantage of her. Thinking of this, he looked at the cold face of the woman in black, and then at the man. He couldn't help but frown slightly. These hedonistic sons of rich parents were really too much. Lung Shuang's heart surged with anger. Because she didn't notice the murderous aura, and because she was careless, she didn't have time to dodge. When she thought of how she had been taken advantage of by the man in front of her, her frosty face became even colder. "Miss, you're so beautiful. Which family's young Mrs. Servant are you?" One of the three men saw that the beauty in front of him was wearing a tight black robe. The black robe outlined the curves of her body, and coupled with her frosty face, it was extremely seductive. Their eyes couldn't help but fill with amazement, and they even took a step forward. Looking at the way the woman in black was dressed, it was obvious that she wasn't a young miss of an aristocratic family. However, her temperament was extraordinary, and the more she was like this, the more seductive they felt. Lung Shuang didn't pay attention to the others. Her gaze fell on the man who had bumped into her and touched her. She coldly said, "Which hand did you use to touch me?" Hearing this, the three men were stunned. They looked at each other and laughed. It was as if they didn't notice Lung Shuang's murderous aura, and their faces were still full of ridicule. Especially the man who had taken advantage of Lung Shuang. The corners of his mouth curled up wickedly. He raised his right hand and said cheekily, "Miss, it was this hand that touched you. To be honest, you're—" Ah. Before he finished speaking, the man let out a blood-curdling scream. His blood-curdling scream instantly resounded throughout the auction house, even overshadowing the sounds of the auctioneers shouting their bids. The people on and off the stage all looked in the direction of the voice in surprise. They only knew that it came from behind the counter, but they didn't know what had happened. However, the sound was too mournful. Some people still sent their attendants over to take a look. The people of the auction house also quickly came to the counter at the back. To be able to open such an auction house in this city, there was no need to mention the power of the owner. Just this auction house alone had many hidden experts. Therefore, generally speaking, no one would seek their own death by looking for trouble here. However, when they followed the sound to the counter behind the counter, they were all shocked by what they saw. A woman in black held a sword that was covered in blood, and a young man in luxurious clothes was seated before her. However, the man's right hand had been chopped off at the wrist, causing blood to splatter all over the ground. A severed palm that was covered in blood had fallen by the woman's feet. Chapter 37:52. The man who was screaming on the ground was so frightened by this scene that his crotch was wet with sweat. His eyes rolled back, and he fainted. The two men next to him were also shocked. At this moment, they clearly felt the terrifying killing intent in the air, which made them tremble with fear. The middle-aged steward was also shocked when he saw this scene. He didn't expect the woman in black to chop off the man's hand as soon as she made a move. He also didn't expect her to crush the severed hand with her foot. He only knew that this scene shocked him so much that even he, who had been in charge of the auction house for many years and had seen many scenes, was shocked. When the crowd who had rushed over saw this scene, they couldn't help but look at each other. They wondered in their hearts, who is this woman in black? How dare she make a move in the auction house? Does she want to die? They thought that the auction house's people would arrest her, but unexpectedly, the steward said to the crowd after recovering from his shock, "This is a personal grudge between the two of them. Everyone, please go back." Then he said to the two men who were scared pale, "You two, please send this young master back first." The two men's faces were pale, but they recovered at this time. One of them said, "He had an accident in your auction house. You want us to send him back like this?" As he spoke, the man looked at Lung Shuang and threatened in a trembling voice, do you know who he is? You dare to chop off his hand. His family won't let this go." Lung Shuang wiped her sword and glanced at him coldly. She turned around and walked back. However, she was stopped by someone after taking a few steps. "Miss, the auction house has its rules. You have made a move here, so I can only ask you to leave now." A middle-aged man stopped Lung Shuang and shook his head inwardly. In the end, she was still a woman. She was still a little impulsive. His family wouldn't let this go easily after she chopped off that man's hand. She was still too young to cause trouble on impulse. Lung Shuang heard this and frowned slightly. She looked at the middle-aged man in front of her and said, "I'll leave after I tell my master." Hearing this, the middle-aged man took a step back and let her pass. He then followed behind her to the second floor. Seeing them leave, the steward hurriedly ordered the people below to clean up the floor and quickly followed them to the second floor. The auction continued, but many people knew what had happened behind the counter. They knew that if the people from that clan knew about it, they would definitely rush over. It was likely that the black-clothed woman would be killed on the spot in a short while. Since it had nothing to do with them, they just listened out of curiosity. Inside, they knew that even if chaos broke out, there would be people from the auction house to maintain the scene. As for fighting, they wouldn't be here. Therefore, they continued to look at the auction items on the stage with ease and continued to bid. She. Chapter 37:53. When Lung Shuang heard this, his lips moved, but in the end, he didn't say anything. He just looked at Fengjiao. When Lung Hua heard that his sister had been taken advantage of after going downstairs, his gentle face turned cold. However, after hearing his master's words, he couldn't help but smile. Go. Wait for us outside. There are still a few medicinal ingredients left. After bidding for them, we can go back. Feng Jiao said, motioning for her to leave first. She let Lung Shuang go out not because of anything else, but because she knew that the family of the man who had his hand chopped off by Lung Shuang should be arriving soon. After all, this was an auction house. She couldn't break the rules of others. Another reason was to let Lung Shuang handle this matter herself. Yes, Lung Shuang replied. He said to Lung Hua, take good care, master. Then he turned and walked out. Outside, the middle-aged man who came with them but didn't go and stood outside the door. When he heard the unrestrained conversation from inside, the middle-aged man's mouth twitched. That master, he actually thought that chopping off one of the man's hands was too easy on him. He should have chopped off the man's offspring as well. What kind of master was he? Why did he not play by the rules? Just as he was thinking, the door opened. The woman in black walked out and closed the door. She didn't even look at him as she walked out. Seeing this, he glanced at the tightly shut door and quickly followed the black-clothed woman to the first floor. It was only when he saw her leave the first floor and stand quietly outside the auction house that he returned to his room. As they expected, the man's family quickly arrived with their men. The two people leading the way pointed at the woman in black standing outside the auction house and shouted, "That's her! That's her!" The middle-aged man in the lead looked forward with a cold gaze. When his gaze landed on the woman in black, a murderous intent burst out from his body. Capture her. I'm going to chop off her hands to avenge my son. When the voice containing spiritual power sounded out, the four cultivators behind him quickly rushed forward. The other cultivators formed a circle around the woman to prevent her from escaping. Four figures dashed over and reached out to grab her shoulders. Lung Shuang narrowed her eyes and glanced at them. In a flash, the black figure disappeared from the spot. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of something that sounded like a kick rang out. The four cultivators who had rushed forward suddenly retreated. There was a footprint on each of their chests. The hidden force of the kick caused them to slow down for a while before they could catch their breath. However, the moment they moved, the pain in their chests assaulted them, causing their expressions to change greatly. Useless trash. The middle-aged man in the lead angrily. He reached out his hand and grabbed Lung's throat. I'll kill you. When Lung Shuang saw the middle-aged man's attack filled with killing intent, he moved and kicked out again. When the middle-aged man saw Lung Shuang move, he immediately retreated and began a fight with her. The two figures exchanged blows, and after a while, the middle-aged man let out a muffled groan as he was hit by a palm strike. He staggered backward. You. Chapter 3754. Which family servant are you? How dare you be so rude and impudent? Tell your master to come out. I want to ask him how he teaches his servants. The middle-aged man shouted angrily, suppressing his anger as he glared at Lung Shuang. Lung Shuang glanced at him indifferently and said, You want to see my master? You're overestimating yourself. How dare you? He bellowed angrily, and his voice, which contained a powerful pressure, rushed towards Lung Shuang. He wanted to use his pressure to suppress her, but she seemed unaffected by his pressure. Before he could speak again, he heard the black-robed woman's voice, which contained a powerful pressure. If you don't want to die, leave as soon as possible. Otherwise, I'll make you regret coming here. Lung Shuang said coldly as he glanced at the people around him. The threat was obvious. What an arrogant bitch, the middle-aged man scolded. Then he heard a slap. Slap. The sound of a palm wind slapping was very clear and crisp. That sound was heard by everyone in the surroundings. Each and every one of them stared at the black-clothed woman with wide eyes in shock. She stood there without moving a single step. However, she raised her hand and a gust of wind shot out from her palm. That gust of wind actually slapped the middle-aged man's face. The force of the blow was so great that his entire body instantly fell to the ground. A trace of blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. "Master!" Those people cried out in alarm and quickly went forward to help him up. The middle-aged man was shocked. He never thought that one day he would be slapped by a little girl. Slapped by a servant? If he didn't tear her to pieces today, who would listen to him in the future? "Master, master, are you okay?" The cultivators who helped him up quickly asked. The middle-aged man pushed them away and stared coldly at the woman in black. And the next moment, he moved his hand, and a sharp sword with a cold light appeared in his hand. He swung the sword, and Sword Chi instantly attacked Long Shuang. Long Shuang dashed forward the moment his sword struck out. She did not even draw her sword. Instead, she faced it with her bare hands. After all, with her strength, even if she did not use a weapon, that person would not be a match for her. Outside, the two of them were exchanging blows, each one filled with ruthless killing intent. Inside the auction house, the cultivators guarding the auction house on the top floor were using their divine senses to observe the fight. The more they watched, the more surprised they became. The master of the Qin family is no match for the woman in black. Yes, the woman in black is much stronger than him. It's just that in his rage, clan leader Chun didn't investigate carefully. He originally came to vent his anger for his son, but now even he himself is trapped in this mess. If he doesn't leave quickly, I'm afraid he won't live to see the sun tomorrow. The woman in black only needs to use her killing move. She'll take his life within 3 moves. As soon as he finished speaking, the crowd fell silent. The middle-aged man's body stiffened and his eyes widened. The sword in his hand fell to the ground. "Master," seeing their family head killed, those cultivators were in a mess. Wasn't it said that she was just a little servant girl? How could she be so strong? Chapter 3755. I don't know which family she's from, but I saw her when she came in. She came in with a red-clothed madam, but the red-clothed madam didn't even show her face. She didn't even need to show her face. That black-clothed woman already took care of the matter. As one person spoke, he stroked his beard and sighed. It looks like the city won't be peaceful. There are so many people guarding Spirit Immortal City, so it's impossible for it to fall into chaos. However, after today, that black-clothed woman's reputation will probably spread far and wide. If the Chun family is tactful, they should suppress this matter. Otherwise, if they continue to cause trouble, their entire family will be wiped out. A few of the guards in the building were discussing what happened outside the auction house. When they found out that the black-clothed woman's master was in the private room, they couldn't help but be slightly surprised. Their master actually didn't show himself and allowed a servant girl to take care of the matter herself. Looking at the Chun family head lying on the ground with his throat cut, the guards of the auction house shook their heads and inwardly sighed. What a pity. A dignified family head was killed because of such a small matter. What a pity. Recently, I heard that many new forces have appeared in the city. Moreover, the people in charge of these forces are all very strong. However, their origins are mysterious, and no one knows where they came from. Who is their master? Outside, the Chen family members carried the corpse back and quickly left, not daring to stay for long. It could only be said that when they came, they were filled with grief and indignation, but now they didn't dare to stay. They quickly carried the corpse back. That black-clothed woman was too strong. They weren't her match at all. They could only hope that someone in the family could deal with her. However, when the Chun family members returned, they quickly went to invite their ancestor. Unexpectedly, the first thing their ancestor said was, "Chase them out. Scram to the branch family." "Old ancestor." The Chun family members looked at their ruddy but angry old man in astonishment. None of them expected him to give such an order. "Each of you go and receive 30 beatings. Remember this lesson." The old man coldly glanced at them, especially the family members of the Chun family. "Ancestor, ancestor, you must help the master." A woman cried as she knelt in front of the Chun family's ancestor. However, when the Dong family's ancestor saw this, his expression darkened. Make the decision? What good son you raised. How many times have I told you? I told you to keep your temper in check, but none of you listened. Now that something has happened, you want me to make the decision? Although he was the ancestor of the Chun family, he was not the biological father of the Chun family head, but his uncle.